signed up and went to Delta Force selection in 2010. You start hearing all these other people, they're like, oh yeah, I went and I left, it's just not for me. I made it. And then you realize that no one leaves that place. It is the tip of the spear. It's the pinnacle of your career. That's just them saying, that they got fired without saying it.
Today, we sit down with ex-Delta Force operator Kyle Morgan.
When I encountered the gunman in that stairwell, I've been shot at a lot, but this is the first time that I looked at a muzzle and I couldn't do anything to stop that first shot. He had me. There was this little piece of railing between him and I, from my perspective and his, and he shot. And then I black out for a second, and then I come back to, and I'm shooting at him, and it wrecked me though. That experience exposed me because I thought I was way better than I actually am.
Ibogaine, what was the experience?
One of the most shameful moments in my life I had to relive, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. And the devil's there with me. I could see him coaching and tricking me and guiding me like we were best friends. And then I prayed. And I said, Jesus, save me. Everything changed.
If you want early 24-hour access to these episodes, please consider going to the Spotify down below where these episodes are available earlier. Please subscribe, join, all that kind of good stuff. And if you haven't already, consider joining our email list. The link is down below. Let's dive into this incredible episode with Carl. So just for the documentary, we usually get people to introduce themselves by name and what they do. We will probably use it in the interview as well. So just naturally introduce yourself and what you do.
So I'm Kyle Morgan, a follower of Christ. Been married to the strongest woman I've ever known, or person I've ever known in my life, Erica Morgan, for 21 years. We have 4 beautiful children. I retired after 20 years of military service, a majority of that in special operations here at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where we currently reside. And I run and founded our training company, Blue Bearing Solutions, where we focus on active shooter response training.
Amazing. So what we typically do is we'll run through chronological order, and then once we get to the midpoint, we'll probably be jumping around quite a bit from subject to subject, wherever it flows, all that kind of stuff. So we'll start at childhood. Like, what was a brief overview, like what your childhood was like, what it was like growing up, where did you grow up? And then also for context as well, it's quite interesting for, I guess, some of the UK audience of what that's like, because it's probably a stark difference from what we're used to.
Yeah. So I grew up all over the East Coast in the United States of America. So I was born in Central Florida, small town in Lake County, Florida, and lived there for probably 4 or 5 years as memories I don't really remember, but my mother's family is all from that area, and moved from there to New York, upstate New York, Utica more specifically, and that's where my dad's family's from. Lived there for a couple of years, moved to Virginia on the border of Tennessee and Virginia from, a young child through middle school, and then moved back to Florida for high school. So bounced around quite a bit. And, I went to 5 different high schools, just to give context of, there wasn't much stability when it came to, we didn't have, we didn't have very much finances or my dad did construction. My mother would work occasionally just for insurance purposes, to have medical insurance. So she'd have these like lower wage jobs for periods just to cover any procedures that we would need. My sister and I, my sister's older than me. And I have a brother too. He's my half brother, but we didn't grow up together. He, with same father. And so just he did construction, moving around to where the jobs were. And so a lot of, moving, but also being evicted because we couldn't make, house payment, and a lot of instability, kind of bouncing around as a young child.
When you talk about like finances, like being evicted because you couldn't afford it, could you talk to us, like, is there something that stands out as a kid? Like, I think most people from financial difficulties almost don't understand as a child that they're actually from a poor background. But was there something that stood out where you first realized that maybe you didn't have that much money?
Yeah. It was pretty pretty clear that we were living paycheck to paycheck. I would hear, my father would weekly get paid maybe, and he'd give it all to my mother. And I thought that was just what we do. And that maybe that is what happens, but being an adult, it's like understanding, our finances together, is important, and it is ours, as a union, as a marriage. But it was kind of like surrender all your weekly compensation. And then he would, take a little bit from the top for his, beer fund or alcohol fund. And then it would turn into this big thing. And so I knew that money was a concern even as a younger child. But one of the biggest things that stands out to me as an adult is obviously the instability was fun. I was a new kid everywhere. I go in and get to start over, reinvent myself. And, but then you make friends, and then you got to so there wasn't, that stability is so important, as an adult looking back now. And, from just like, we'd have like these nice things, like a nice TV and even a nice car sometimes, and then it would be gone. And at first I was like, I don't know why that's happening. But I realized that as a teenager, like, why are we going to these rent-a-centers and rent-to-own places and, paying way more than it would actually cost to buy something, just for us not be able to make the payment and then them take it back. So a lot of the things we had, furniture and appliances and TVs and things like that, like we would have, and then they'd be gone. And so that's when I really started to realize like that we absolutely are, struggling financially as a family. And, it was near and dear to me because, not to jump ahead, but, the first time I got a job, it really in the military, all of the money that was saved up from basic and advanced, or AIT, and I gave all of it to my mother and my father. It was a couple $1,000s, and that was the most money I've ever seen as a young adult at 18 years old. But, so it's something that I knew that we were struggling with though at a pretty young age.
Just on that, giving your first paycheck to your parents, was that like, did that become a regular thing? Was that just something you knew you was going to do? Like,
I had no concept of like how to manage money. It didn't really have, I wasn't shown that. So like when I had all of this money in a bank account, that I couldn't touch for 4 or 5 months, and then I saw it, I was like, man, that's a lot of money. And I know who could use it, because I'm getting my food paid for, my, shelter, food, everything is paid for, as a young soldier. So my immediate reaction was like, I know who could absolutely use it. So it was just a part of like anything that we have. It's like, let's share it amongst each other. And what happens in our family stays in our family. It's family business. And a lot of it had to do with, my mother, God bless her, but she'd have to put like do her hair and makeup before she'd ever leave the house, and then we'd have the nicest clothes or a couple pairs of clothes, but couldn't pay the bill for this or that. But we're prioritizing looking a certain way. So I also, and this is in hindsight, looking back at it, but it really started to it made me focus on the wrong things as far as prioritizing. Well, if I look good, then everything's okay. And you can look good and everything is okay, but everything wasn't okay. I'd much rather, looking back, be like, hey, maybe I don't need the nicest clothes. Like, let's make sure that we're comfortable as a family, versus just kind of making things work. Because it boiled down to instability. It created instability.
So in a snapshot again, like how was the relationship with your parents in childhood? And then if we could maybe even chain on to that of was there any military influence from them both as well?
No. So there's really not much military influence through my family. My dad did serve for I think a year or two in the Army in post or as Vietnam was winding down. He was a turbine engine repairman, or that's what he was trained for. But he ultimately joined for whatever reason. He didn't really talk about it much, but I do know that he joined and did that. And then I know that the way he explained it to me was like, all I would do is just work on the same thing, the same engine, training engine, and then wait for the word to leave. And he's like, I didn't want to do that. So he just left, which is called going AWOL, absent without leave. And that got him kicked out. So he didn't really talk about it much, but that's all I do know about it. And it wasn't, obviously something about, a lot of people, some people do come from like a lineage of that, and I did not.
What was the connection to faith growing up?
My mother was raised by her grandmother and in a very strict kind of belief system. Like I don't think she couldn't play sports like on the teams at school and stuff. And I think she had to wear like certain types of clothing and stuff. I think she was Pentecostal, but that's what she was raised in, and she definitely didn't practice that with us. And my father, there was really no influence from him on the faith side either. So I didn't grow up around faith, but I did have, when I, towards high school especially, like really close friends that I made in a short amount of time that, I would listen to their parents or their mother and father, and it's like, and they were really influential on me from a faith perspective. And it's not that they would preach to me. It was just like, it was very much a part of their routines, their lives. It wasn't like, oh, Kyle's here, so let's do this. It was just, oh, I'm here. I'm going to acclimate to something they do and practice. And I was really intrigued by that because they were just very grounded, family. And I looked up to them and I was curious about it. I would ask questions, but, that was the occasional, like getting invited to a Sunday service here and there, but not a part of any church or any specific denomination as a Christian. But I would call myself a Christian. So I'm not really sure where that stemmed from exactly. It wasn't like it was forced on me, but, and I only say that because I would go to a service here and there. I was really curious about, some of the things that my friends' parents were talking about and discussing as far as Christianity. And then when I joined the service, like you can say no religion, or you can say a religion on your dog tags. And I put Christian. So, yeah.
Okay. So yesterday you mentioned about a mentor or a male role model. I think, was it a coach or a teacher?
Yeah, both.
Both. So was you physically gifted in sports at high school? Or?
Yeah. I mean, I played multi-sports since I was 5, since I was, eligible or old enough to play a sport. But football was something that American football, I really took a liking to. And, I wasn't the biggest kid, but I had a lot of heart, and I was physically talented. I was, pretty quick. I was strong for my size, and wasn't afraid of getting, taking a hit or giving a hit. But I also was learning how to play baseball and basketball as well. And, playing all these sports, that's the one thing I remember from childhood is any games that I had, man, my mother is there. And I want to say my father was too, in a lot of those. So, that was something that I was really, and I know that because I can hear the yelling from the stands now. Just remembering some of the good times too is important. And honestly, like, this is the first time I've talked about that because I just realized that. So thank you. And part of that's just the discussions we've been having over the last 2 days. It's a blessing, but playing sports, it was really untapped potential because moving around so much, like you'd have one coach that would at a younger age would be like, man, this kid's talented. Like, let's work with him more. Let's develop. And then we would go move somewhere else. So, that's where I say it's kind of untapped potential, to be groomed to be a more of an athlete. And, ultimately I realized I was not that good at baseball and had no desire to get good at baseball. By the time I was in like middle school, when it gets more competitive, and then, basketball wasn't tall enough or good enough. But football, I had some potential there. I had a really good arm, so I wanted to be a quarterback, and but I was better on defense. So, and I say better because if I had the ability to be developed by, some consistent people and places and atmospheres, I think I could have, maybe excelled as a quarterback. But I was definitely a decent, kind of outside linebacker. And I started gaining a little bit more weight, but putting on more size. But ultimately, I wasn't eligible to play my junior year of high school because of my grade point average. My grade point average from when I got into high school started to drop, man, because things got more serious, and I didn't like take anything serious. So class clown, well, like teachers love me, but it doesn't matter. Like I got to do the work. So, but once again, like going to 5 different high schools, like teacher can love you, but if you're not there, they can't help you. So not until like my sophomore year did I go towards the end of my sophomore year, did I go to the same school that I graduated from. So basically like 2.5 years or 3 years almost at the same school. And that's where I met that teacher coach and was on the team. And then I wasn't for a really like quick amount of time because of the GPA got below a 2.0. And, instead of that summer, like focusing on how do I, set forth a path to like get this thing up. My whole summer between my sophomore and junior high school, it was just like, hey, let's go party. And, just acting out a bit. And then my whole junior year, I just kind of let it fall to the wayside and skipping school and stuff. And that teacher that I'm talking about, I had a class with him, and he would look at me and be like, Kyle, like you're a really smart kid and you're talented, but you're not going to graduate high school. Is that something you would like to do? You're here. Would you like to graduate? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm not graduating? And just naive, young, and, wet behind the ears, and just, I was like, yeah, yes. And he's like, well, I'm going to need you to focus. And he sat me down and kind of laid it out. And so my whole senior year, it was just like, I got my friends were doing half days. They were going to, work, half the day in school because they had all their classes that they needed, and they were just finishing the final ones. I was doing all the core classes that I had failed. So I was like, in overtime with it. But, 9/11 happened in 2001, and I was a senior in high school. So I was sitting, I think it was some math class that I had to retake. And I remember that feeling of watching this on the TVs, the Twin Towers being hit, the first one and then the second one. And it was just eerily, quiet, and an occasional outburst from a phone call from this person or that. And kids were leaving and stuff. And I was like, well, what's going on, And it was like a visceral feeling though. But it wasn't like run home and go hug my parents. It was like, I was mad. And I didn't know why I was mad. I was just mad. And I looked at that teacher, and because he had served in the military in the 90s in the Ranger Regiment. And I was like, can you talk to me about that a bit more? And he had told me stories in the past because I was curious. I saw some photos in his office and stuff, but I was interested in that. And this happened, and I talked to him. I was like, can you talk to me what that process looks like to join? Like, I want to do something. I want to fight. And, he helped me on that path to joining into what they call the delayed entry program. So I signed up at 17 years old with my mother's signature. But then you got to do it again when you actually turn 18. So it's kind of it's great that they do that. And it locked me in, right? I was locked in. December 2001, I signed up in that delayed entry program. It's contingent on that I got to graduate, so I need a degree or some sort of equivalent, and then I got to turn 18. So I graduated first, and then I turned 18 shortly after, and then I left for basic training a couple weeks after I turned 18.
Just a quick pause from the episode for a short but important message from our sponsors, Element. If you're feeling flat lately, low energy, brain fog, struggling to focus, there's a good chance it's not a lack of motivation and it's not caffeine either. It's hydration, or more specifically, lack of electrolytes. But water on its own actually doesn't hydrate you properly unless your body has the electrolytes it needs to absorb it. That's why we use Element. Element just dropped their 12-ounce sparkling cans, and I've been drinking these things non-stop. They're so convenient. I don't just drink them around workouts. I'll drink them whilst I'm on the go, if I'm at work, or if I need them when I'm in a pinch. And they have flavors like black cherry salt, orange salt, lemonade salt, and pineapple salt. All of them have a solid dose of electrolytes that help keep your focus and energy where it should be. If you don't believe me on how much we drink these things, this fridge looks like we've got tons of cans in there. They're all empty because we pretty much drank them all. It's trusted by everyone from elite athletes to military units to doctors and professionals, which says a lot. Element backs it as well. They offer a no questions asked refund. So if you don't like it, you get your money back. And if you live in the US, you get added bonus of getting free shipping. For a limited time, our viewers are getting free sample packs with your first order by heading to drinkelement.com/Mulligan or go to link in the description. Once again, that's drinkelement.com/Mulligan or go to link in the description or the pinned comment and get your free sample pack today. Try it, see how you feel, and then decide. Let's get back to the episode. At what point did becoming a Delta Force operator become like an idea? Like, was that there from the start, or was it something that progressed as you got there?
No, it was definitely not something that was there from the start, because I didn't have a lineage of military history in our family, and so it wasn't something I knew much about. I mean, I really knew about the military from that teacher, and then experiencing it, being 18, like I had a lot to learn about being a man and a soldier, but it was my team, the team I got kicked off of. I am now on the team, so I've always wanted, that's my family. And I realized this looking back too, because like, instead of going home and spending time with my family when I could leave, like when I was 15, 16 years old, I was gone. I was at a friend's house. I was doing this, I was doing that. I was always away from home. So I realized that I was missing something. And when the football side of everything was taken away because of my doing, I realized how important that was to me when I got to the military, and I was like, oh, here's my team, and my family. And, but I didn't know what I didn't know either. So, I signed up for a basic infantry contract with airborne in it, and an assignment at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and for the 82nd Airborne Division. And, but getting there, it was a lot. I saw, some people that were, more obviously senior in rank, and all these things, learning more about rank and my position and what I need to do, be a rifleman, be a good teammate, squad mate. And then we deployed shortly thereafter to Iraq in early 2003. And that's my first experience to a lot of different things, but that's my first experience of special forces, because I realized that we didn't really have much, man. We were still wearing like the old, like, flak vest type body armors and BDU and wearing like desert camo. It was just very disjointed. And then, we didn't have like armored vehicles. So we're trying to make sandbags in the back of these cargo Humvees and stuff. And just out there reacting to contact. And, we would do occasionally, there would be these teams that would come in and we would support them by outer security or, convoy security or whatever. And they looked different, their dress was different. Some of them would have beards or longer hair. And immediately was like, who are they? My little circles of Private Morgan and the E4 Mafia, like, hey, specialists, who are they? And they would think they know, and they'd say this or that. But it wasn't just that they looked different. It was like watching them interact with our leadership and just the professionalism of that and how they moved, very deliberately. They moved with an intention and a purpose. The way they carried themselves, I was like really curious about it, but I didn't know who they were. They could have been, I don't know who they were. I still don't. But it planted a seed that there's more things out there in this pipeline I'm in of infantry. But the next thing was like, how do I advance myself in this job that I have as an infantryman? And it was Ranger School. So U.S. Army Ranger School was something that, as a young soldier, like I volunteered to do, which some do, but a lot of people don't. And I saw that because the leadership that I did have that were Ranger tabbed, Ranger qualified, to me, they were better leaders. And I wanted to be a better version of the tasks that I was given. And so I volunteered for that and excelled through that pipeline and process. And then, through that exposure, I went to our scouts after that. And that's like more of a smaller team doing more reconnaissance stuff. And that really just set me up to be more curious about special forces at large. But Delta Force, I had no idea existed. So it's one of those things that, up to that point, like that wasn't even a thing on my radar. Not until I went to Special Forces assessment and selection and then made it through the qualification course and then went to a dive team and then was deployed in Afghanistan. And only then did I actually interact with someone that used to work there. And he was attached to our team. He was retired and was doing more of a, what's that word? Advisor kind of role for, he would bounce around to different teams and advise on this or that, current tactics and enemy, stuff. But man, he was a cool dude. And I just attached myself to him. And I was like, this dude is awesome. And the way he talks, the way he moved, the way he act, like he would be attached to my team. And we'd have, 2 SF guys, a platoon of partner force Afghanis, and then him. And I was like, hey, Kyle, what do you need me to do? I'm like, shouldn't you tell me what you should do? He is just so cool, man. I was like, man, if you could just stay in the back and make sure we don't lose anybody, that'd be awesome. And he did it. And he was the best at that. And we got to spend so much time on that deployment, playing poker and hanging out. And I just, I started to really just take in everything he was sharing, and asking and curious about what he used to do. And I was like, I didn't know anything about it. So one of the things he said to me was like, because he used to be in Special Forces, and he did say this, he was like, if I could do it all over again, I'd have went sooner. Because my issue was like a newer, haven't spent too much time on my team yet. Why am I going to go try something else? And his advice was, if I could do it again, I'd have went sooner. And not that it's a for sure thing. It's one of those things though, like I got to try. So I trained up and went to Delta Force selection in the spring of 2010. And, but I didn't know, even there, my only experience from that was from him. And of course, once you mention that you're going to try to assess for it, or not everyone can just assess for it. Like, you have to be a good qualified candidate. And then you start hearing all these other people. They're like, oh yeah, I went and, it didn't work out. Yeah, I was there and then I left, it's just not for me. And then you realize that once I made it, which is the hardest place to get to stay at and to leave, no one leaves that place. Like, because they didn't like it. Like, it is the tip of the spear. It's the pinnacle of your career. It's an honor to be selected, to even go to selection. And even if you don't get selected, to make it through that course, it's the most professional course I've ever been to and ran. And it is, and I know, and I see why and how now, but it's like, people that get selected to be an operator, like, don't leave to go do other things. That's just them saying, that it didn't work out, or they got fired, or without saying it.
Why is the OTC so professional? Like, what's the difference between that kind of stuff?
So I'm talking about selection.
Right, selection.
So selection, and the reason why it's so it's a professional organization, period. Every person there is the best at their job, whatever their job is. If it's an operator, be the best operator, and then they'll give you more. If you're the admin clerk, be the best admin clerk that the Army has or the military has. If you're the rigger, be the best rigger there is. And they assess and select and develop based on performance. So it's a performance-based organization, but the big thing about selection, why it's such a professional experience, whether you get selected or not, is so that if you go, and I go, we all get the same opportunity. There's no you can't ad lib. There's no well, here's a little extra help, everyone gets the same look. And that way it's fair. You can either do it or you can't. You're going to be shown what you need to know when you need to know it. So you could show up and not know much about this or that. And the classes that you receive they are impressive. And I from the other side, I'm like, man, this is wild. And because I've been to military courses before, and I was like, these like robots. They're just like, duh, 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 duh. But then on the other side, like me being an instructor for selection, a cadre, and I know how. And it was very challenging, but it's very humbling to do, because you know the weight that it has to not mess it up. And because of the culture, man, it hasn't changed since 1978. So being a part of that's huge. And that's why, though.
And just for context, what is a Delta Force operator?
So it's the military has, special missions units, and there's a few, but Delta Force was started to, in the 70s, there was a lot of these, hijacking of airplanes and taking, airliners, taking them hostage and stuff, or the threat of. And the U.S. they looked at the military and they said, hey, generals, go and find what force that we have that can be a part of this type of response. Like, who is the most capable at responding to this type of dynamic threat of an aircraft? And I don't know how long that took, but they went out and they came back and they said, we don't have a force that can. So they, of course, were like, okay, well, let's create one. And that's where Charlie Beckwith had worked with the 2-2 SAS, for different liaison positions and stuff for years. And he took basically, a lot of the culture and the organizational systems of what he experienced with the 2-2 SAS and helped develop what is Delta Force. But that was the primary reason, was to be able to do an aircraft assault. So, and to this day, it's one of those things that they are the national mission force. So if someone is taken, an American is held hostage abroad, and we can get to them, we're going to try. Now, politics get in the way. Like, can we negotiate for their release? But the big thing is there's only 2 organizations that are notified of these things. And then it's just a matter of who's closer and how can we get them there. And that's, Delta Force and SEAL Team 6.
Just a quick message from today's sponsor. After putting my body through extreme physical and mental stress over the last few years, I realized something important. Most people don't have a health problem, they have a clarity problem. They know something feels off, but they don't have real data or real guidance. That's what Marek Health helped me with. This isn't generic healthcare. You don't get brushed off, you don't get handed vague advice, or have to wait months just to have a real conversation. You get comprehensive lab work, a dedicated health coach who actually checks in, and licensed medical providers who help you understand what's happening in your body and what your options are moving forward. Whether you're dealing with low energy, sleep issue, hormone imbalance, or you just want to perform at your very best, Marek gives you the tools and the team to make the progress. No guessing, no one-size-fits-all protocol. This is real health optimization service. And this isn't just for athletes. If you're someone who takes performance seriously, physically or mentally, this is about making informed decisions instead of hoping things sort themselves out. If you're serious about your health, the first step is simple. Get your blood work done. Head to the link in the description and use code Mulligan for an exclusive offer on your initial assessment. Stop guessing and start taking ownership of your health. Go to the link in the description for your exclusive discount and make sure you use code Mulligan. Thank you, Marek Health, and let's get back into the episode.
Bit of a side switch, but I think it's relevant to sort of the time period we're talking about is when was the first experience or the first realization that alcohol was a bit of an issue? Like when was or when was it introduced, especially when it comes into regards to your career?
Well, it's one of those things that culturally, alcohol is American culture, British culture. Like it is, just having a brew for lunch. It's like, well, and that's not a military necessarily thing, but you do see it. Like we celebrate with it, we mourn with it, we cope with it. Ultimately, it becomes a problem when you start to lose sight of why you're using it. So like for me, I used to tell myself it was like a social lubricant so I can be more social. And then I realized that, yeah, I'm fun. I'm a fun drunk, and then I realized that pretty quickly that based on learned behavior from childhood, like Erica, my wife, was like, when I'd come home drunk and she'd be like, and I would never drink and drive. Like, dude, it was like, I would do nothing to compromise my military career up to a certain point. But then she would feel the wrath of that. I'd be fun with everybody else and I'd come home and she'd be upset with me. And then I'd be like, punching holes in drywall and breaking things like, you're going to hear me. And not all the time, but it would happen. And that's something that she was just like, oh no, that's not okay. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, that's just what we do. I'll patch it. I'll fix it. I watched my mother when I was a child go outside and put a hole in my dad's truck every 10 inches with a hammer. For what? I have no idea. Why? It's not okay though. And, Erica being the strongest person I've ever known in my life, she addressed that really early on with me, but that didn't stop me from drinking. It started to stop her from drinking. I noticed over the years, she would not want to drink with me because she knew that she'd have to take care of me and how unpredictable I would be. So I actually just realized that right now, looking back at that. I've thought about all of this a lot and talked to her about all of this too, but yeah, over the years, I saw her, she wasn't a big drinker anyways, but we met at a club. I had a fake ID, 19 years old, put the dance moves on her, and the rest is history. No, she ghosted me after that, but she was a little older than me, or she is. And I told her, I was like, how old do you think I am? And she's like, oh, 21. I was like, no, I'm 19 and I'm in the military. Just got back from Iraq. And she's like, oh no, like, get away. And she did. She ghosted me. But then I went to Ranger School. So it was like right after I got redeployed from that long Iraq trip in 2004. But I had a voicemail when I came back from Ranger School from her. And we dated for a very short amount of time. And then I met my son. He was 3, and raised him as my own son. So instant father, love him dearly. And, we got pregnant with my oldest daughter, like bang, bang, bang. And we have 3 girls. So, he's 26. My daughters are 20. She'll be 21 this year. My other daughter's 18. She'll turn 19 next month. And then my youngest is, which I think you've met, in passing, at least the 3 of them. But my youngest is 11. And, so the alcohol piece of this, what I failed to realize for a long time was the impact that it was having at home. I would keep things away from home, but then I would be useless the next day, hungover, and they see everything. My wife sees everything. My children see everything, even though I'm not like raging around, anymore. But it's like, what good am I? Am I really being present? I've worked all week and now I'm, and I was a high functioning alcoholic, man. And I can say that because I'm sober, truly, for 4.5 years. And it's one of those things that, like, I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol from the first time I experienced it. And, I think I had alcohol poisoning the first time. I was like 14 years old. And, so there wasn't really anything good that's ever came from it. But then, I'm basically building this kind of, expectation, of like, oh, dad's going out. Okay. That means tomorrow we're not doing anything with dad. And it's just this expectation. So then Erica would start just taking the kids and go do things. And I'd just be hungover in bed. And it's in the limited amount of time I have with them, because I spend a lot of time away or training, away in combat or training for combat. And, just, it's no way to parent, man, but, it still wasn't enough to be like, oh, well, I got a problem. It didn't become a problem for me until I got arrested. And, that was 16 years in the military, 15, 16 years in the military before that happened. And everything became unmanageable in my life after the Radisson Blue attack response. And then how I dealt with that by myself and my relationship with alcohol and things that don't honor my family. And then I carried that back home, and I was a different person, man. And, I was the last person to see that, though. And, but it still wasn't enough. I left my wife, my children, moved out. And, not until I had to tell my unit that I'm in jail, did I actually say, well, maybe I do have a problem. And it's placating. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I need to work on this, because that's what they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear me say that. And I'm like, I'll do whatever I need to do because I want to be the best this operator I can be. And that's what my identity was. It's been this identity crisis my whole life of kind of conforming to wherever. I learned how to please from a very young age, because if I upset you, I got hurt from childhood. And so I really learned how to perform and to say the right things, to avoid those things. And my sister didn't do very well at that. And she took a brunt of that punishment. And it's, and then I looking at my military career, like it was kind of like, I took control of everything I could. Like if I wanted to go do this thing, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to prepare for this opportunity. because I knew those opportunities opened more doors. And that's how I controlled my path, which the majority of my time kept me here, which is unlike most military careers. It's like you bounce around, a lot. I spent my majority of my career here at Fort Bragg. So that's one thing that I did provide. Like my son, grew up with his wife. Like she's a grade above him, but same street. They're in like 3rd and 4th grade. Like they've known each other since then. And so that's been a great part of the stability that I've been able to provide, but it's been extremely unstable in so many other ways for them. So, and then even with the alcohol problem, me acknowledging it, me going and doing treatments, intensive inpatients where they took my shoelaces, my belt, doors are closing behind me. I viewed it as punishment. And I'm like, it's time served, man. I'm going to go back to being operational. That's what I cared about. And it really took a lot to reconcile. And this is a challenging part of being a high functioning alcoholic, because it wasn't like I had to drink every day. I didn't have to wake up and drink to get going, but I would binge drink if I didn't have something the next day. And they're both dangerous. But
so you had the Warrior Hearts, and like you help, you just support that because it's such a good cause. Like that's why we're talking about it today.
Yeah, and that pamphlet you saw, like that number that's on there, someone's going to answer.
Yeah, I mean we'll link all this in the description, but the foundation,
Frontline Healing Foundation.
Yeah.
Man, thank you so much for bringing that up again, because I was like, when we took a restroom break, I was like, man, I meant to talk about Frontline too. So thank you for being a good interviewer.
You're right. I just wanted to talk about the numbers that you said.
Yeah,
like, because
it's staggering.
You've given away an incredible amount of money, but there's actually a sad side of that as well.
Yeah, so Frontline Healing Foundation is, to my knowledge, the only nonprofit that solely exists to subsidize financial hardships for active or veteran military, law enforcement, or first responders that are looking for treatment. They've realized they need help. They've found some sort of advocate, but then they've met some hurdle of like, they can't pay for it, or a VA claim gets denied, or private healthcare is only going to pay a portion of it. They can submit a general hardship through frontlinehealingfoundation.org. And I'm on the board, and it's a voluntary board. There's only one paid position. It's the CEO, Jordan, and she gets paid a very, very fair wage and for all the work she does. But it's one of these things where, like, I read these general hardships and to validate they are who they say they are. Like I can interpret a DD-214, and then we have to look at bank statements to see, like, are you actually, financially in a hard place, or are you just blowing your money? Here's a cash app. It's all, so we look at all of it. We have to scrutinize every bit of it to make sure that we're being good stewards of the blessings, these donations that we get. But the hardest thing I have to do, that grounds me, for one, reading those reminds me of where I've come from. And I have to vote on them, yes or no, approve or deny. And the hardest thing I have to do is deny them, not because they don't deserve it, but because of lack of funds, due to lack of funds. And if you look at the numbers from last year, and this is staggering, I thought that we need to make people more aware that this is a resource that they can use. Well, that's not the case. We need to continue to do that, but we approved over $400,000 in financial aid or hardships for people last year. We denied over $700,000 due to lack of funds. That's a huge problem. And it's not necessarily people, they're submitting them, but we have to say no. And that's one of the hardest things I have to do, is say no due to that. So to me, it's like, how do I continue to use this influence that God's given me, this opportunity with you and your team and your audience, if you're in a place to donate, and even if it's just to share this, like, that's also wonderful, to share this message. And if people are looking, I put my name on that the money that you or anyone donates to this cause directly goes to the care of the service members, the law enforcement and the first responders that so desperately need this help. And why would we say no? Even when we do say no, like Jordan works her tail off to try to get to a yes in some way. And sometimes it's going to people that are financially wealthy that we know that if we tell them like, hey, we need this for this person, and they'll directly donate to that person. And if you have a group of people that you want to help in your community, like we can earmark donations to say, all right, anyone that comes from this community, gets this money. But just finding more creative ways of raising funds for this cause.
We spoke about the protector mindset, and I think it's relevant to the Radisson story. But I just wanted to ask you, like, is it something we're born with? Are we born with a protector mindset, or can we develop a protector mindset?
I think we're born with it. I think we're born with the capacity, right? And this is what I posted this last night, where like to have the capacity is such a blessing. It's the potential, right? It's something inside of us. It has to be nurtured. It has to be grown, or else you're reckless. You're a liability. And I know that even from a young age, like I was willing to put myself in harm's way to protect people I cared about, because I kicked in a crack house door and literally got into a fight with a couple dudes in the house to find my sister, and pulled her through on my shoulder and got out of there. And I look back at that, I was like 16, 17. I knew I was a fighter, a scrapper and stuff, but like the risk, that untrained, like just put myself into harm's way. I mean, I could have been killed doing that, but her safety was more of a priority than my own. And that's that mindset that, even though I couldn't put words to it like I can now, of the protector mindset, it is something that I had the capacity for. And then I developed the capability of being a better protector over time.
To somebody who's watching this who maybe doesn't have that same gut feeling, maybe feels cowardice in certain situations, like, is there hope for them? Like, is there hope that they can become capable and find that switch to be able to protect themselves or their family?
Yeah, I think it's, man, what a wonderful question. Because cowardice is on display, looks a lot like someone hiding from a threat, right? But what's a threat? I could give an example of gunshots, absolutely a threat to your life and others. How you react in that space is what's most important about how you react in that space is a healthy relationship with fear. We are human, and fear helps us. Fear helps us survive. Now, how we function in that space of fear, because courage is not the absence of fear, it's the prioritization of something else over that fear. So in the example I gave my sister, yeah, I was afraid, but I prioritized her safety over my own fear. So that's courage. Physically, that's courage, right? And how we function in that space is something that, there's opportunities to be courageous every day, doing the next right thing. Something where it's like, the most courageous thing I've ever done is get sober. Through my whole life, everything I've experienced and done, the most courageous thing I've ever done is get sober. And I can say that with 100% certainty is because that led me to my Lord and Savior, to surrendering my life. And now my life is better, 100%. It's not perfect. I'm human. If temptation was a sin, then Jesus would have been a sinner, and he wasn't. And that gives me hope that a perfect man, that I want to become as close to as I can be to him, as a model for others, that I'm still going to make mistakes. And there's opportunities to be courageous every day. And a lot of people just think it's, moving to the sounds of gunfire. Yeah, absolutely. But it's not like you get those opportunities every day necessarily. So if you're trying to figure out, like, do you have it inside of you or not? Like, it's what's something you're afraid of, right? And then how do you deal with that fear? What does it do to you? What do you let it do to you? Do you let it control you? Do you avoid it to feel better? Do you confront it with anger? Do you sit in that space and internalize, why am I so afraid about this? It could be a test that's coming up. It could be a result from that test. It could be, putting on your boots every day and knowing that everything that I trained for and that it did in combat could kill me. It's the high risk behaviors and stuff. And like, I developed a very unhealthy association with fear to the point where I thought I was so skilled, that I just didn't feel fear anymore. But it's not that I didn't feel fear. I mitigated risk with experience, with collective experience and individual experience. So assuming risk, but we mitigated it with training and learning from mistakes. And so it's one of those things where for everyday citizens and active law enforcement, military, like, having a healthy relationship with fear, and there's opportunities to feel that every day, and then how you work through that is an example of courage.
You spoke about yesterday, we can cut this out if we're not allowed to mention this on the podcast, but you spoke about a teacher that you was training on your course who was running towards it, like instinctively just running towards this danger. But then I feel like there's some people who don't and maybe freeze. And you mentioned a situation the other day where there were some people, it might have been first responders, who had froze in a situation and it caused the death of people. Yeah. What's the difference between freezing and going towards it? And if there is an example, like, what's the danger of that situation? Why are people freezing as well, I guess, is the question. And a situation. Sorry.
No, you're good. I don't have the answer, but I can tell you that it's something that some people, like, my courage is contagious to them. And once that unlocks inside of them, like, they're going to lead others on a different situation. So it's something that some people don't have the experience to put their courage on display, for their courage to be put on display, because anyone that's been courageous and move into the sounds of gunfire will never say that, like, that was super courageous of me. Someone else will. So someone else will see that act and say, man, like, that was super, super courageous, bro. And when people said that to me, I'm like, nah, you do the same thing. You do the same thing. But it takes people seeing that and saying it. And it takes people, like, in those dynamic, threat environments, you seeing that cool, calm operator that's just, like, not bothered by anything. And you're like, I want to follow him. And you have to learn how to be led well in order to lead well. So I was someone that was so interested in learning from those people, and I wanted to become just as good as them. And it wasn't I want to be better than them. I'm chasing somebody, and we all need someone to chase. And now I'm chasing Christ, but I still need someone on this earth to chase another person, another man that's older and wiser than me. And that's Tom Spooner for me. But man, what a wonderful question, because it's the human response to fear, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. What we do in that space depends on how well we've prepared, we've prepared our mind, body, and spirit for potentially violence or avoiding a car accident, or dealing with a miscarriage. It's what is our support system that we have, and where do we give that to? And if we're the biggest thing in the world, that's a scary place, man. Because at some point, and I've experienced this, you're not enough. You're not. You can't do it alone. And there was a void in my life that I tried to fill with my own ego. I tried to fill with other people. I tried to fill with things. And not until I got sober was I ever able to actually fill it with what it needed, which was God.
You just spoke about that, your mentor now that you look towards, Tom Spooner.
Yep.
First of all, like, how did you find yourself gravitating towards him?
So he was a former unit operator as well. Early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s through our overlap was like he was getting out as I was getting there. So 2010, 2011. But I had heard of him, and his reputation and which is wild because at a place where everyone is a true performer, really good at their job, because if you're not, you get fired. Like there's no tenure there, right? You've been there that long, so it's like you've made it. Nope. Anyone for performance related issues will get fired. So he had a reputation even amongst the giants, and but really what drew me to him was in that time of when I got connected. It was 2016, and I was dealing with things and started hearing about what he's doing with Warrior's Heart. So Warrior's Heart is something that he started, and he will live and die with that mission. And that mission is to create an environment where he has created for warriors to heal warriors. And it is special. It's a residential treatment facility with for treatment for chemical dependency, post-traumatic stress, and traumatic brain injury. It's a 42-day commitment. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced or seen. And I haven't been as a patient or as a client. They don't call them patients. You're a client. And the first thing but I've done tours there, and I'm a massive supporter of everything they do. And it's not for everybody, but if you do know someone, or if that is you, there is hope out there. And when you get there and you check in, like you walk into what is a home, and it says welcome home right there. And I get chills because it's like a lot of us need, some of us need rescuing from ourselves. And that was me. And that's so many of us. And that's where he shared this with me too, is like, salvation is free, but sobriety is not. So we can accept salvation, but if we're not sober-minded, we haven't really accepted that gift of salvation. So I had to get sober. I had to get clean, right? Like I had to prepare myself to present it to God. And it was almost a year from when I got sober, almost the day before I surrendered my life to Christ, because I needed I gotta clean myself up before I can come in front of God. But through that process, I was so curious about the man that was Jesus Christ, and realized that, because I am a very cerebral person and I don't trust. I struggled with trust for my whole life. My first visual memory was traumatic, and it's something that I hold near and dear to me, because I have this opportunity to be very intentional, and I've had this opportunity, and regardless of how good or bad I've done, I've been given this opportunity to do well, and that with my family. And everything I do is not about me. It is about what is my actions going to do, my tone. What is that going to do to them? I want them to feel safe and secure in everything that they do. They are my legacy. Not what I did, not what I've accomplished. It's how I show up, their children's children. That's my legacy. So without getting sober and having a place of healing it took me a lot. It took me a lot longer than it. Well, it took me exactly as long as it should, because I don't live in the past. I don't say, well, if I could change one thing, I wouldn't change anything. And I am extremely remorseful for all the mistakes I've made, the people I've hurt. But I'm on this path and with this mission, and what Tom's doing with Warrior's Heart is it's healing, man. It's this beautiful facility in Texas, and there's one in Virginia now, 500 plus acres, and just, you go down there and it's like, you can't tell who works there and who's actually receiving the treatment. It's just, it truly is Warriors healing Warriors. And he, I've reached out to him a few times before we formally met. Someone introduced me to him because they knew I was struggling with alcohol. And it's one of those things that the timing was God's timing about when we got on a phone call and then met in person. But he's one of those people, though, that he's a servant leader, and he's a hero's hero. And it's not just because what he did on the battlefield; it's what he's doing now that I say that. And we all need that type of man in our life to seek counsel from, And you got to ask him, though, because if you don't ask him, and you're just like, oh, I don't have that person. And it's why it's so important as a father. That's you for the rest of your children's life. Be that type of father for them. And it's so important. But even if you're not, you can be that for others too. Even if you don't have that, you can be that role model, that example, that mentor for others. And that's what, if you ask me what my mission is in life, it's to leave everything that I get to be encounter or to touch or to influence better than I found it in some way. And everything that I do, if anything gets in the way of, at the end of my life, my wife not being there, it's not for me. And my children being there, it's not for me. And if God blesses us with grandchildren and they're not there, it's not for me. Because that's who I want to spend my final moments on this earth with. And that's what success is to me, is we get to celebrate my life and my impact on them and their impact on me and everything that could be tomorrow. So this is but a blip of time that we have on this earth. And we have to, sometimes we need someone to help pull our head out of the sand. That's that rescuing from ourselves sometimes. Get ourselves out of the way. And I encourage people, man, like, it starts with incremental things, right? It's not just like 180-degree shifts. It's like, man, just focus on every day. Let me do one thing to get myself outside of myself. Just one thing. And if you have to be intentional about it. And then before you know it, it just becomes a part of your practices and what you do. So
on that point you was making there as well, especially I think for young men, like you had a coach as a role model, maybe, I don't want to speak for you, but maybe your dad didn't step up the way you wanted to and a coach did. I had a very similar situation. Like I had a basketball coach and then a teacher, and like these, I didn't spend tons of time with these men, but when they were in my lives, they had a massive impact on me. And maybe it was the absence of a father that made that role so easy to fill for them. But I think it's so important for young men especially to be able to find strong male role models. And I'm curious if you've seen this documentary it's gone kind of viral, especially in the UK, Louis Theroux documentary. It's called The Manosphere. No, okay. So it follows a few of these sort of male influencers who are out there trying to, they're like quite misogynistic, they're lead people to bad habits and promote, bad things, but a lot of young men resonate with some of the messaging. And
I think I may have seen that. Yeah.
Well, it's
we're talking about three different people specifically, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, the thing that I love Louis Theroux as a documentary maker, I think he's fantastic. But I feel like the way the light's been shone on these guys is only showing that there's negative role models out there. Like for me, my experience growing up, I had positive male role models that really helped and shaped me. And I said, someone made a post about this thing, and my only criticism of this documentary is I wish that they'd shown some positive male role models. Like, why show all this negativity when there are good guys out there? So when I am doing these interviews at the moment, I wanted to ask about this thing when I get in front of a good male role model like yourself. I think, how important is it for young men to find a good male role model, and who can be a good male role model? Like, do you have to be, a Delta Force operator and all of this kind of stuff, or can you just be like my school teacher or my basketball coach who had huge impact?
Well, I think you know the answer to this.
I do know the answer.
but I love the question because it's such an important topic, because it's what's missing. Like, men like us focusing on how do we become better role models. Stop making all of this about ourselves. Like, I'm halfway, hopefully, God willing, halfway through my life. And I want to maximize every experience that I've had, that I've been given or had, good and bad, to be able to heal out loud, to be able to help guide and lead. And the reason I'm still here is to do that. So it's missing. That's exactly what's happening. And our youth is so hungry for that. And there's a reason, because it's missing. And these people that are positioned, if you think about it, for me in the 90s, like, you had the dream team, you had, Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and the Bulls. And it was just positive male role models, like in sports. And, we had a lot of that, and not just them. There was a ton of it. And not that we don't have, the sports has only grown, and it's like these celebrities, these professional athletes are missing opportunities to be that instant role model, because people see that, and they're super young people are super impressionable. And they're watching everything that's happening and being said and done. And that's where you get these, kind of negative, influential people that are painting things in a misogynistic or in like a woman, like I said, that's womanizing, or, profanity, or just leading them astray. And maybe they know what they're doing, maybe they don't, but it's helping them grow something. And it's probably their ego. So if I'm doing this not to grow my ego, this is selfless now in nature. I am a servant leader. How can I serve you better? And if I think about this opportunity every day, I'm presented as soon as I leave my home, right? How I serve the Lord, how I am a servant leader starts here. If I serve out there and I'm just this positive male role model for all these other people, and my house is a mess, then who am I really serving? I'm serving myself. So it starts here, and it's really easy to get blinded out there, especially if my passion, we're talking about, like, if my passion is my purpose, it can be blinding. I have to check back in here. What's the pulse here? What's the thermometer here? Because I do a lot more publicly now, and as do you, and there's a reason that we can probably justify doing all these different things. And this is a great opportunity. Oh, this is great. Man, your mirror is your wife, and listen to her. But it's missing in our culture and worldwide, and people are filling these voids because our youth is so hungry to chase someone, and a lot of them are tired of being, well, you could just be like this, you could be like that, it's okay, you can just do this, no, it's not. Like, we need to build boys to become men. And I'm not speaking about women, even though God's blessed me with 3 daughters for a reason, to soften my heart. And they are my world. And I will do anything to guide them and to lead them and to continue to, even from afar, like but I'm growing them, I'm developing them to leave my home. And, so I think just standing for what you believe to be true, and if our truth is anchored in my truth or your truth, then we're already wrong. Because my truth is not my truth. I will lie to myself. My ego, my pride will consume me if I do that. It's something that I have. If I'm looking for a battle to fight, we did a book study on this, The Wild at Heart. A wonderful book. I highly encourage any man to read it, young men. The author does a great job about breaking this down, but there's three things that we're looking for as men, and it's wired into us. Is a battle to fight, a beauty to rescue, and an adventure to go on. And it never goes away. Now, where we prioritize, one over the other, we stop dating our wives. We stop courting our wives. We stop rescuing our wives. And I'm complicit to this. That's where my truth is not it can't be. So it has to be anchored in something bigger than me. And for me, that's God. And the only truth there is the Word of God, the inspired Word of God, and Jesus's words. Like that's what I have to anchor every decision I make, every thought I have. I have to take every thought captive, and then be very precise now with giving that to our Heavenly Father. But I have an accountability system, but I also have this opportunity to be that example for them, to be that spiritual leader that I'm called to be as a man, that Erica was doing when I was running away from my pain and inflicting pain. She went into her faith and she led me to Christ. And that's the man that I'm chasing to become more like, which is, there's no finish line with. That's what sanctification is to become more Christ-like. So, but the role model piece is so important, man, because we are so, I don't know if this is the right word, affluential. We have the ability to influence so many people daily, especially when we have social media and just being a good steward of everything you say and how you conduct yourself. Like, so if you experience me on social media or me in an interview like this or in a training course or at home, I'm the same man. There's no duality in my life anymore. But I had to surrender that to our Creator. And things have gotten easier to deal with, but the challenges are increasing because God has more for me. And in order for Him to give me more, like I have to spiritually grow. I have to emotionally mature and continue to do those things. And as I'm doing that, healing out loud as a leader. Hey, I'm sorry for saying what I said. That's not what I was trying to say, but I know that I shouldn't have said that to you. I just healed out loud a little bit because you see that and you're like, man, he didn't have to do that. Especially in the workplace. I'll tell my team at Blue Bearing, if I'm on the range, for a long day and there's guys that are shooting unsuppressed, like right next to me, I'll get a bit of overexposure to overpressure. I'm very sensitive to it now. And, but on the way back to the Airbnb, I'm like, hey guys, I'm feeling a bit, overstimulated right now. And I know that this manifests for me with being very agitated. So how I acted at the end of that day, like that's not how I want to show up and lead, but I also want to talk this through with you guys so you understand. It's just being in tune, with what you're capable of and not capable of. So, and being honest about it. And that's how you become a better role model for others. There's no like guide to this. It's not like, let me just read this book and I got this. Like, I'm not saying don't read books. Read books for sure. I just mentioned Wild at Heart. It's a wonderful book. But you are a sum total of every good and bad leader as men or role model that you've had or didn't have your whole life. And it's not too late to become a better role model unless you say that. But it's an intention. I have to be intentional about focusing on. That's what I believe emotional maturity is. To be emotionally mature is to be able to not just understand my own emotions and not let them drive my life. They're a thermometer. Like, okay, why am I feeling this way right now? Okay, cool. That makes sense. Like, they're a gauge, but they don't drive my life, so they keep me, balanced, but I have to become more emotionally mature. I have to now get myself outside of myself and realize that, man, the way I said that, oof, everyone just got real quiet, and remain curious. Like, why is that? I said something a certain way. Hey guys, what did you understand about what I just said? And it's like, well, I mean, if we mess this up, like, we're fired. Well, no, hold on. That's not what I mean. That's not what I mean at all. I just said that the wrong way. And it's understanding, your emotions, not just yours, but what the impact is on others. And that's emotional maturity. And that's selfless, right? Like, it's not manipulation. The reason that I think I've become better at it is because I used to use manipulation to get what I wanted, to be accepted, to be liked. But it's, I'm truly curious about, how I'm leading people and how I'm impacting them. So I tell this in courses. I said it to you yesterday, man, remain curious. Do you have the capacity or the ability to process the information, the potential? And if you have that and you remain curious throughout, I have nothing but time for you in the training environment. And remaining curious is such a good mantra in all aspects of life. A healthy skeptic. Why is that door open? That's weird,
Yeah.
I went straight to training there, but
Yeah, I think just the way you've put that's really, really interesting, because I think all of those guys who are in that documentary are led by ego. Yeah. They're not trying to help. And they also are their own God. Like, they worship themselves. And I think they're at the center of their own universe, and nothing else really matters. So yeah, this could lead on to the ego death that I wanted to talk about, of yourself and your own career. And like, I think we find, especially with a lot of the special ops guys, you're on this pedestal. Like, people think you're a superhero, and like, you've got this status of what you do, and people that really aspire to be that. And then at some point that has to go. You have to retire. You're not that in that career anymore. And I think some people can't comprehend or get come to grips with that. I don't know how you struggled with it, or if you struggled with it, or how you managed to have that ego death. I don't know, but I'd be interested in talking to you about it.
it's a very real thing. And people that like see these, special operators that get out and however it is, they're out into the public, whether they're training, speaking, doing leadership stuff, or even in corporate settings. Like, some guys get away from it and want to challenge themselves in a corporate setting. For me, like, I did a couple different internships with corporate companies before I got out, and I realized that two things: I can bring value outside of what I used to do. I got to get creative with it. I have to become technically and tactically literate with any of those opportunities. One was like a data science company, and the other was like they buy and sell precious metal. Very different type companies, and it's a big bulk. But I did see that I could bring value without a degree, without a college degree, but I also did see that I don't want to work for somebody else. Like, that's been 20 years of my life. And I think it's one of those things that, like, did I feel like I had more to prove on the military side? No. And that's huge. If I felt like I left more on the table, I should have medically retired at 17 years. And that's very clear to me, because it only got worse after that. And everything I did started to affect my ability to perform, and then my body started to stop me, and then my actions started to stop all of it. I mean, I could have been kicked out of the military for lying by omission for a DUI, and I I didn't tell anybody about it because I wanted my retirement. I had already got my retirement orders. I was about to go to do these internships for 6 months, and I was like, well, they don't know, so I'm not going to tell them. And everything happened the way it happened, and I'm grateful for it, because had that not been found out through a flag that came up in a security clearance thing, almost 8 months later after the fact, that period from when it happened to 8 months later was unmanageable, because now I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to find out. This is the end. I'm going to act like this is the end. And I just stopped caring about. And now I'm out of sight, out of mind in another state and by myself. And just, that's, everything works out. Everything will be used for my good and God's glory. And in some of the darkest places, like, his presence is still there. And that's the blessing about looking in hindsight. You can, from this biblical view, from this renewed mind, it's like, man, that was a blessing. That struggle was a blessing. And that's where shame no longer consumes me. It is, I am remorseful with guilt, right? So guilt, it can be dealt with in two ways: shame or remorse. Shame could manifest like avoidance, anger, projecting, that in different ways, but it's consuming, and it will destroy you. And remorse is healthy. It's acceptance of, yeah, I did that, but that's not how I want to show up, and I'm sorry for that. And I'm going to do something to change this. And that's what I've done, and that's what I'm doing. But the leaving something on the table is where you see guys that are still struggling with, like, they feel like they should do more, or they get out and they go contract overseas, and they're still trying to get it on, and you're conditioned. And it's not just at the unit I was in, but you are conditioned that the pinnacle of your life is to make it there and to work there, to serve there. And that there's nothing that's going to even come close to it. So the moment I am doing these things that I'm doing now, and they far surpass what I used to do, that was a part of my life for a part of my life. And I am extremely honored and humbled to have served there for 10 plus years. And I'm extremely remorseful for how I showed up there towards the end of my career. And, but the fact is had that not been found out, had it not went the way it went, they removed me from the unit the last 2 months, before I sat out on terminal leave as punishment, and put me in USASOC, which is our Special Operations Command, which is literally right down the street. But it was punishment. And I am so grateful they did that, because they could have taken my career. They could have taken my retirement, and they still, even through all the things that I did and didn't represent them by doing, and I'm extremely remorseful for those things, they still allowed me to retire with honor. And I did. My service was extremely honorable. But had that not happened that way, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I would not be sitting in this chair. I would not have this. I would be dead.
It feels like a lot of stars aligned to get you here today. And I think that hindsight that you was talking about, like looking back, is really interesting when we're talking about the Radisson earlier, of you weren't even supposed to be there. Like, it was, you were just supposed to be doing something else in a different location. Few weeks prior, is that right?
It was probably more of like a month and a half, maybe 2 months max. But when we pre-deploy somewhere, like there's a prep period, and it's quite extensive. We do our homework, we do our preparation, and we tailor that to the mission. And 2015 was a really rough year, but it was also a blessing. That's when God blessed Eric and I with Kennedy. She was born in January of 2015, and then I got deployed shortly thereafter. no-notice mission that ended up taking 2 months of a deployment. And then got back from that and was prepping to kind of go back into that same area with the team. And then I was asked, like, hey, Kyle, we need you to not do that. We need you to do this. And that's that outstation in Mali, in Bamako, Mali. And I was very like, why? So-and-so's been tasked with doing that. Why am I doing that? Why do you need me to do that? Well, he that person feels like he is not comfortable, wearing a suit and briefing the different high-level country team folk and all that. And I was like, and we know you can. And I was like, okay, yeah, thank you. But like, what is the mission? What do you need me to do? Well, I need you to represent the unit. I need you to maintain the relationship so we can divest of those positions across the Trans-Sahel to our Navy counterpart. So we need every single one of us to go dismantle ISIS and the caliphate that they were trying to start. And I was like, well, thanks for thinking about me, but no. And they were like, well, yes, voluntold. So I'm doing it. And I was apprehensive, but once I let go of that, I was like, all right, well, I got to prepare. So I started learning more from past positions, people that were there, and meeting with them and learning more about the situation and the lack of mission. And it was no part of my predecessors in those positions. It was more of a political thing and geopolitical thing. So, because, Al-Qaeda had been rebuilding in the Trans-Sahel for a long time, IQIM, and it's a breeding ground for terrorism. So there's a lot of work to be done over there. But for that position specifically, it was humbling. But I was like, embraced it and was like, okay, cool. How do I prepare as best I can? And then I show up and do the, handoff with the person I was switching out with. And the first thing I did was like a Halloween party. And they were like, we're going to be the Ninja Turtles and you're going to be Michelangelo. And I was like, cowabunga, dude, let's go. And that was my first, real first encounter there. And I just got really drunk and was like, is this what this is going to be like? And a lot of it is in those austere environments, like where you feel like you have freedom to maneuver everywhere, and it's kind of lawless in a lot of ways too. Like you kind of go rogue. I did. I was just like, whatever. And it's very dangerous for an operator to not have a mission to sink his teeth into. And 3 weeks after I got there, is November 20th is when the Radisson Blue attack happened. And that's that point where I was like, oh, this is why I'm here. Like the moment that the phone call happened in the early morning, I was like, oh, this is why I'm here. And I was like, 5 to 8 armed gunmen, shooting and explosions heard. I'm like, that sounds dangerous. I'm being a little jaded about it, but I went right into Roger that. Like, that's why I'm here. My ready kit bag, right there, boom. I know exactly how it's packed and what's in it because I packed it. And we do it the same way every time. And I just grabbed my stuff, threw it on, went next door to see if my neighbor was awake or aware, because he worked at the embassy as well. And I was asked to go check on him. And when I did that, he was on the phone with some people that worked for him in the hotel. And I was like, Roger that. Give me their names and cell phone numbers. And he was, I said this on Sean Ryan's show, but it was like, he was blown away. He was like, why? And I was like, because I'm going to go get him. It's a start point for me. I'm like, yeah, 5 to 8 armed gunmen. Okay, cool. It sounds like they jumped out of embassy vehicles. Like, oof. Like I want somewhere, I want more information, more intelligence. So, but he was like, you do that? Like, yeah, man, I'm going right now. So he eventually gave them to me, but, and it didn't take long. So like from the phone call at 7:10 in the morning to by the time I made entry into the side of the hotel, it was probably 40 minutes max. And it's probably 3/4 of a mile from where I was living. So, but I had, you know, it wasn't just me. Like my station, the station's past positions had, you know, had built relationships with the, you know, the embassy's, State Department's regional security officers. They're essentially like the State Department law enforcement. They're the ones that are supposed to like say, this is a safe zone. This is a higher threat. They should be, you know, walking through the hotels, doing their assessments where any American would stay on official duty. Like they'd have to authorize that. And, so they have a ton of ground knowledge. They live there. So, you know, called them, and there was 2 Marine special operations guys that were doing a different type of mission over there. And they stayed for a lot longer than we do. But I had already started shooting on the range with one of them. And I was like, man, let's do something other than drink. So we got access to this range. Like, let's go shoot. So I already started building rapport with him. And, you know, he's my first call. And then the RSO, and they were linking up in front of my house. And I just hopped in with them. And then we went to the side of the hotel, and I told him to, you know, stop before we got too close, and dismounted to use some of the different avenues to have some cover so we can approach and absorb a little bit more. And the last shots I heard, or explosions and shots, were as I was making entry into the side. But in between that is when that American that was trapped in the room on fire. It's like the banquet room or the breakfast room. So they timed it to where they knew, the attackers timed it to where they knew that there was going to be a large congregation of people in that breakfast room or on their way to the embassy vehicles to go to their different embassies, not just Americans, like across the world. And so that's when they launched their attack. So they were actually across the street with suitcases and all their things, and they launched the attack from outside or across the street, and then chased everybody in through the breakfast room, and then set it ablaze. They actually they used like the sterno, like buffet heater things, and like started to set the banquet room on fire. And they did. And then they chased everybody through the kitchen and actually turned all the gas stoves on and kept chasing them through. And that's where they end up murdering a lot of people, because one person, you know, decided to go into this like maintenance elevator area. And they, you know, there's probably 10 people stacked in that thing, just executed. Had they just went right instead of left, at the end of that hall is a big exit sign. It's potentially freedom. So they were there to kill Westerners, and they're an affiliate of Al Qaeda, Al Maratoon, and they've been planning this for a while. And the main planner for the whole thing is extradited. He's in New York right now, awaiting trial for murder and for terrorism and so on. But you know, when I get to experience like sharing aspects of that story and just my story, and that video I showed you, like that helps me like save my bandwidth when I'm doing speaking engagements and things like that. But even right now, like when I get emotional about something, I'm so grateful because I'm healing a little bit more. And nothing about that situation was okay or normal. If you couldn't recite the Quran, they were executing you. It was spiritual warfare. It was psychologically damaging too, And I realized this in hindsight because everyone was dressed just like us. And it looked different than anything I'd experienced up to that point. I became desensitized to life and death in the Middle East.
You know, when we was doing the drills yesterday, you said when you hear that with you, or you hear that other person, that support come through, in that situation, I'm just curious, like, did you feel in hindsight, looking back, that you felt that God was with you, or you had that support with you? Like what kind of state was you in as it was happening? Like, was it very practical? Did you feel, was there any like spiritual side of it, like looking back?
Looking back, you know, when I encountered the gunman in that stairwell, and I looked up at this muzzle, and that's what this stairwell is in my arm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a scene, and that's like a ghost of me. And it's got the date on the stairs right there. And this is the award I got for valor, the Distinguished Service Cross. You know, I've been shot at a lot, but this is the first time that I looked at a muzzle, and I couldn't do anything to stop that first shot. He had me. And I tried to make sense of why I'm still here. From a scientific perspective, I went back and obsessed about this over and over. And my reasoning was, well, there was this little piece of railing between him and I, from my perspective and his. I have all these photos, and that's how I got this. It's like that first round just literally was meant for my face, because I'm looking down the muzzle from 5 feet away. He has the high ground, and he shot, and then I black out for a second, and then I come back to, and I'm shooting at him, and now he's shooting all around me, and it's just hitting all around me, and now I'm stumbling down the stairs, because it knocked me out for a split second. And I immediately was just like, and I yell at them, and I run back up the stairs, and then I heard the primer pop as he said Allah Akbar on the grenade, the first one, and I jumped and dove down to the next landing, and it wrecked me though. And then the next one came down, and I didn't let it stop me, but it exposed me in a lot of ways, because this is dangerous. I don't care how good you think you are. What makes us good is us. That experience exposed me, because I thought I was way better than I actually am. I'm good, but collectively we are great. And I did not have that. And even though, yeah, he would have gotten me, but I guarantee you my teammate would have crushed them. And I felt so exposed. Every corner I took, every room I kicked in, I'm doing every job. And the guys that were with me, God bless them, man, I love them to death. But they are not Delta Force. And that's no fault of their own. And I can't just sit there and be like, oh, well, you're doing it wrong. But that half arm's distance gap, like that, shoot that gap, don't plate your teammate, man, that's where that comes from. As if his life depended on it. And you're willing to risk yours to do it. But it works. If you've committed to eating your piece of that crap sandwich. I loved your response to that yesterday, by the way. I'm like, how do you eat a crap sandwich? And you go, I wouldn't. I was like, yes, dude, that's actually the best response I've ever heard. But let's say we got to.
Yeah.
And I tried to use the elephant.
Yeah,
And
the elephant
you're like,
helmet,
oh yeah,
yeah.
one bite at a time. I was like, all right, yeah, but it's still an elephant. It's crap, man. But it's that with you is so, I've really like learned what that meant in close quarters battle training, and operationally, there isn't a doubt in your mind what that person that says with you is doing.
Is all close quarters stuff that you train with somebody else? Do you train by yourself because you wouldn't? I guess you wouldn't find yourself in that situation very rarely.
No, it definitely. It's a team sport, right? It's like it's designed to be done with 1 man, 2 man, 3 man, 4 man. We all have our primary sectors of fire and secondary, and then how we, move on to what's next, where we're going next, work in the center of the room, where we came from. There's so much work to be done. And it's very fluid with people you practice with, because everyone just positionally understands, well, I am closer to this, so I'm doing this, I'm closer to this, I'm doing this, or how to make their position better. But it's a team thing. So I think coming back from that, there were some lessons learned tactically that I took back to the unit, and I'm very proud of being able to share those. And I won't say I changed the way we train, but we definitely started training more with fire and rescue in a fire environment, shields, how where they're appropriate in a hostage rescue, and how quickly that turns into a barricaded suspect, or vice versa, a barricaded suspect turns into a hostage rescue, solo actions and response. So there isn't a formal curriculum I've been through that just focuses on solo CQB, because it's a team sport. So that's what you guys experienced over yesterday, is like, let's learn what's near optimal, or min force, let's say 2, right? Let's learn how we do this together. And then let's break down how to do this by ourselves, and where to prioritize what. Because now you know how challenging this is with 2, and it helps you, it reinforces, okay, I have to prioritize, this right now, and then this very quickly, and then this and this and this. So, so it's something that I've developed over the past 4 years with active shooter response protocols and the protector mindset. Like, and you experienced a bit of it yesterday. We start with talking about, 2 people, how do we open doors for each other, all those things, and then how do we clear together, and then we layer in solo, and then we come back together with a convergence, deconfliction and convergence, because the known and active threat is others are coming, other responders are coming. It's just, I can't control what they're wearing. Are they off duty? Are they on duty? What are they armed with? I can't control that. I just have to be ready that others are coming. And that's where you got to experience a little bit of that deconfliction with an active law enforcement officer. It's a real thing. If you're in the right place at the right time, we want to build your confidence that you're the right person. But the solo part of CQB is something that I've just really tried to develop and refine based on lessons learned.
Yeah, I don't know which direction to take this in, but I think I'll go off the back of the incredible work you've achieved and that you do at Blue Bear, and with your team and yourself and what you built, and your wife especially. What I experienced yesterday was just incredible, and I know that you're scratching the surface of what you guys are actually capable of doing as well and delivering. You took a 3-day course and condensed it into 3-4 hours, and then
we didn't leave there until about 5 p.m. So it was probably more of like 6-7 hours. Erica was like,
yeah,
you're just going to train with these guys? I'm like, yep, that's what I love.
But the version I got, which was incredible, is amped up so much more. Like, you go to an actual school and do this with child actors and people involved, and on real locations with
a place they haven't seen.
With a place they haven't seen before, yeah. And
the context is like super layered, right? So it's like, if you're a private citizen in that course, you're going to pick your kid up. It's 3:00, 3:30. You're going to pick your kid up at school. You have a team member or a staff member observing, so he's driving for you, because we do drive from one location to another, and it's beautiful, man. The way that I got to see that it executed this last weekend to the full scale that I've always wanted it to be, and us met meeting all of our training objectives, the students walking away, not feeling like we threw them in the fire too soon, like really preparing them as best we could. And it was awesome to see that.
So what we're talking about here is like an active shooter situation, and you have to gather your own information on that. Your crew will layer that information in for you, however it's through stuff on the floor, the location that you're at, maybe some verbal from somebody, and you have to actually act on the fly as if this is happening. It feels so real. I really recommend the experience to absolutely anybody especially if you're carrying a weapon and you have a gun, but to know how you would react in that situation. Like, I don't think there is something out there that could do it in the way you guys did it. Like, I think the confidence that would give you at the end of that course would just be absolutely incredible.
And that's our goal, is that we leave you with tangible things to work on, skills, like harder skills, like, hey man, like positioning or, lateral movements, or just very specific. We have to be very specific, because if you leave the course and you're like, oh man, I got to train more, that's too broad. What are you training on? I got to dry fire more. Well, what are you dry firing? Like, you got to be very specific. And that's where every day, at the end of the day, I ask each student, what's one thing that you want to take from today that you maybe learned that's new, or something that you were reminded of that you already knew, that you can take tangibly and work on? And over 3 days, like, we have a list of things for each student and their scores for some of the scored evals and stuff that we do. And we send it to them. And that's only been possible. That's always been my goal, but that's because of the team that God is formed and put me in charge of. And, Devin and Rick, you didn't meet Rick. He's actually in England right now at the World Masters, the World Cup for the field hockey, the Masters division for Team USA. So, but you got to meet, Bradshaw, Spencer, Justin, the rest of the team. Yeah. But the big thing is like tangible things to work on, and then leaving there with the confidence that if you're in the right place at the right time, you are the right person. That's what we want. We got tangible things and the confidence. Now, confidence only comes with working on these things that the perfect practice makes permanent. Like, this mindset it can't be a hobby. It's a super expensive hobby. Go pick a different hobby. This is a mindset that you can take everywhere with you. Armed or not, you're armed with it. And we talked about this yesterday. Like, even if I'm unarmed in a situation, context has to be there. Where's my family? Right? They are why I'm still here. I'm not going to put them in harm's way to go run towards a shooter. I'm going to make sure they're safe before I would ever do anything like that. And if I'm by myself and I'm unarmed, if I'm by myself, I'm armed, I'm going to use the skills of my hands and the integrity of my heart to go save people. And in most cases, I have to neutralize the threat in order to do that. But they're cowards. That's what we use with statistics, is when met with an armed response, whether private citizen or law enforcement, they give up or kill themselves. So they're cowards. So we help you, we reinforce that. They're evil, but they're cowards. And it's unlike any other mission that anyone's ever been given. There's no date and time. You don't get to set the conditions. The clock is ticking. And it's a priority of life. It's a priority issue. When you see people waiting outside, hiding, that could go in and respond, that are armed, it's an issue with their priorities. And they need to choose a different profession. And that's okay, because some people aren't protectors. Some men aren't. Some are just providers, and they're carrying a lot of ego with them. And they think they're more capable than they actually are. And they're a liability. Don't be a liability. Be the one. And that's what I want to walk around. And I'm not looking for fights anymore. I'm continuing to serve by sharpening the edges of others, as that's sharpening me. But that doesn't mean there won't be sparks. That's forming something that's unbreakable, right? Is that process of forging.
Well, I mean, if anyone wanted to find out more about that, we'll link it down below. But it for me, in a nutshell, it was you taught me the skills. You taught me the skills in the time that you had.
I taught you everything you need to know.
Yeah, everything I needed to know. That's it. I'm dangerous now. But no, you taught me all
You
the
did
skills.
great, by the way. I want your audience to hear this too, man. Like, if they don't know, I know they know that you're a performer and you push yourself outside of your comfort zone with so many different things. And I think that's super admirable too. And for someone like me, I can learn from you and be worth learning from, right? That's the thing. And that's what I want to be. And you are that man too. And I got to experience you in my dojo. And it's like, just so hungry to learn and just asking questions and applying, right? So it's like processing information, applying, and that's where aptitude comes. That's where growth comes. That's where the capacity, the potential turns into the capability under pressure, right? The capability is that pressure is seen on in performance under pressure on demand. And that's a long process. That's where there's no like finish line for it. And you did great though, is what I'm trying to tell you, the audience and you it was a pleasure to work with you. And, you know, if I had 3 days with you, it'd be even better. But we'll do it. We'll get you down to it.
Next time. Yeah. But I can't thank you enough for that opportunity. And I wasn't just left with, I think we had that conversation at the end and it was like, well, if I'm back in the UK, this, you know, active shooter situation could happen for sure.
Because, yeah, and we talked about that because legally, you know, most firearms are not allowed, but that doesn't mean that bad people can't get them. That's why when people say, like, we need more gun control, we need, man, we absolutely need to make sure that you can legally possess the firearm, but that ain't going to stop people that can't legally possess it from possessing it. So what do you want us to be, disarmed? Like, that's crazy. And in the case of like the knife, the blunt objects and those types of attacks, the cars, vehicles, like subduing someone, I mean, without a gun, against a knife. You asked me that question yesterday and I wasn't going to sit there and tell you, well, yeah, if you do this and you do that, you're good. I don't train to fight against a knife with no gun. Now, it made me think about more about, I've also trained a lot in fighting and using, you know, all my experience with boxing and with jiu-jitsu and all those things and, you know, manipulating and using, you know, different leverage and things like that. But there's so many other people that train, like I mentioned yesterday, that focus on knife fighting. And it made me think about it too. I was like, yeah, that's actually like continuing to develop myself so I can now be able to speak more from an authoritative perspective about that. But at the end of the day, like when it's fighting with guns in your hands or without. So you learn how to fight is a big one. Take a punch. If you've never been punched in your life, you're not a protector, man. Go get punched and then you might be able to call yourself one. So that's when my nose is all jacked up. I got a punchable face. So, yeah, man. So but that was a wonderful like reflection though, because you know, it's not that we don't want to train foreign citizens. I love British citizens. I love, you know, the Canadian friends that I have, the Australians and so many other countries, but there's so much work that's got to be done domestically here for me. Mm-hmm. And there's so much more. I'm learning how to run a company and be an entrepreneur. And there's so much liability in everything we do. It's hard to get insurance for what we do. Mm. So I have to be, so right now our courses are American citizens, 21 and up, not a felon. But you know, experiencing that with you yesterday, I was just like reminded of like how important this is it's the right people. Because it's not just like, oh, this is an American thing. It's not that. It's just, I'm 4 years into this company and trying to figure out, you know, how to run it and grow it as well. Just because there's a lot of things that it opens up to when you start training foreign citizens.
I was left with the idea of like, if it was a gun or a knife, the stuff that we did would still be relevant. If I had the intention to go into that building to get my son out of that school, the way we moved into the building would be very similar. And if your intention is to go get the gunman, one thing you said is you might get shot. If your intention is to be a protector, you might get shot. That's it. So
it's like if he's got a knife, expect to get
you could
cut.
get stabbed. You're going to get cut. So it's like if you make that agreement ahead of time that you're going to protect your child, then okay, like there's no question, I guess. And you wouldn't know until you're in that situation. I can't sit here and say I feel like I could with certainty, but I've never been in that situation.
You would. You would absolutely would. I saw that when we had that conversation. I was like, oh, he would absolutely do it.
And that's why I'd love people to experience what we did yesterday, because I think I can't even imagine being in a school, but Devon did such an amazing job. I was sat there and I had like, when those gunshots rang, like the hairs on my arm stood up. I was like so into it, like into this idea that this was real. Yeah, incredible.
And if we can do that in training safely, because it's not like physical safety, but mental too. Like I want to make sure that you understand. I said something yesterday about like, that's the consequence, right? Like that's not, I didn't mean it as like, you're a bad father if you're not thinking about your son in this moment. What I really meant, and you understood this, is that like, if we can think about our children and their safety, and we're doing these types of trainings, it's going to enhance it for us because we're good men. And I don't want, and these environments are overly stimulating. So even when people volunteer as role players, or we're using different crisis actors and stuff, like at any point we do a safety brief, like if they're uncomfortable, raise your hand, high vis vest, we'll come and grab you and talk you through whatever it is and take a break. And if you'd like to rejoin, you can rejoin, but it's critical though that we have the role players, and they're given very specific things to present. It's not a paint war, it's none of that stuff. But it is a lot. But one of the things that you reminded me of is there's a lot of these things that happen where they're false alarms, or they're threats, right? And they're just kids are doing these things on social media or through a friend. They're saying these things, and then the friend's reporting it, and then it comes to nothing, right? No, but it's a rep. So this was, I don't know, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, I got a call from my local sheriff's office, a deputy, and he was like, hey, there's been a threat at the high school for a bomb. And I was like, what? And at the same time, like, we got a text from my daughter that was there at school there. And, and she's like, oh, we're okay. We're all going to the stadium. And I was like, he also told me that there was more to it. He's like, I'm not supposed to tell you this, Kyle, but there's this, and this also is a potential threat, which looks like a rifle, a bunch of ammo, specific round count in a vehicle in the parking lot. So as soon as I heard that, I went straight to the school. They had already formed a bit of a perimeter. I just go right through, drive deep into there, right near the stadium. I see the first law enforcement officer. I'm like, hey, sir, can you come here real quick? I didn't lie to him. I told him, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I know. And this is what I'm asking. Can you please go find my daughter, so-and-so, and tell her to come here? And he was like, I don't know if I can. And I was like, sir, please, I'll be out of your way. Can you just do this for me? And he did. And she came up and she was super upset. And I didn't say anything. I said, just get in the truck, sweetheart. And didn't say anything the whole way home. I'll explain more later. She was embarrassed. And we got to the house and I explained it to her. And, she's still a little upset with me about it, but I don't care. Like, I care about her safety above all. And I knew that the agency that was telling me this was on it. So, there's so many of these false alarms, these threats. There has to be accountability. That child's parents should be put on display. He should be held accountable. They should be held accountable. This is not acceptable. That has to change. And the only people that are ever going to change that is how you and I show up as role models for them. And they're going to be the ones that change it societally. And that takes time.
Yeah, it's traumatic, man. It's awful. Okay, let me switch it up to to ibogaine. Like, I think this was something we were speaking about at the end of yesterday. So the one note I've got on here that is that final year of deployment was your daughter being a baby, and I think having that, having her as a gift, and is it worth talking about that before that ibogaine? Did the ibogaine experience come after that?
I'm trying to think how to connect that. The ibogaine experience came after that, but I think the ibogaine experience, everything else of looking back came after that. As far like truly looking at it from this renewed kind of perspective and more healed perspective, right? Like the brain healing itself, which is why it's been so received the way it has. Ibogaine. And then you're looking back at these things and you're like, those things were my daughter, that was very much like before all of that, like it felt like, I felt her love and I loved her more than I knew how to love myself. And I would never take my own life because I didn't want to do that to her. And that's where I do believe that God blessed us with her at that time for what was to come, that shaping and molding and forging, right? That the pain in that process, the darkness even, to come to the light. But she was that light for me. And God knew I needed that. And it's still my choice. Like, I could have made the most selfish decision, and that's taking my own life. But at that time, she was my light. And that's all I needed in that moment, to not do that, to not take my own life. And sadly, hopelessness is where that feeling comes, and it's, I don't know, it's circumstantial why guys take their own lives, and in that hopelessness space it is the space though. And she was my hope. Now there would be periods where she wasn't with me, and then it would flood me, hopelessness. And then every experience I had with her was just like, the light would come. The light never got completely put out inside of me. And she was that light. So, and she, and my older children, I told myself a lie. I said, I've done too much. They'll never love me again. It's too late. But her, it's not. And that's why I love them all equally. But God knows everything that we need or don't need. And he blessed me with her. And she's my little princess, but she's not so little anymore. But the thing is like, those missed opportunities with my older children, I get to show them that I was a bit lost. I was a bit misguided about how to be the right father. And not that it was all bad, but it was bad. There were some things that were bad that I should never have done, and that they saw and felt. But now they get to see me be that father for Kennedy. And they're not jealous. And it's growing our relationships with each and every one of them. And our children are such a blessing. But if we take their love for granted, we're going to lose it. But it's not too late unless you say it is.
I mean, you've got an absolutely beautiful family, and I think a lot of that probably stems from your wife. And no offense. And
None taken.
the
That's the funniest thing you've ever said. I mean, probably.
no, the fact that the older girls are like you say, they're not jealous by it. Like there's this, like, I think that's for a lot of people that there probably would be a bit of jealousy there. But I think the way, you know,
They're such good humans, good humans, and they see that as like that nurturing instinct, and like in my absence, they would do that with Ken, and they're all so close, and they all have their own relationships with each other and so on, but they're what a family should be, and they're my family, they're my children, and everything I have is theirs. Everything I'm doing is for them, and it may not feel like that in this moment or that moment, but it is. Everything I have is to give to them. None of it is for me. If I'm blessed financially, it's to give to them. And I know that when I give this to them, they're going to be good stewards with it because of how I show up. Regardless of how I did, that's not who I am. That's how I was showing up. This is who I am. So this is this reframing, this mindset of not letting, the past be the past. There's enough, and then the future will consume us if we're so worried about the problems of tomorrow. Those tomorrow problems. It's we need to be intentional and have a plan, but ultimately, like, they know I love them, and they know I'll do anything for them. But it takes work, because trust. I had to rebuilding trust with them once I fractured that. Once I took that for granted.
We spoke yesterday about rock bottom, which I think you turned the terminology around on itself, which I thought was really good the way you worded it. But that moment where you saw yourself in that third person, I thought, was it immediate that was a connection to God? Like, is that what you felt like at the time?
No. But I do now. Because I was still in like, what's going on? How is this possible? I can rationalize anything. But at the end of the day, like, seeing myself from that perspective, out of body experience, near death experience, like, that is absolutely God. And I, cause I was never gonna, I tried everything I could in my own way, self-will, to fix things and then to adjust to the new norm. Well, this is just the new norm, right? I just won't drink liquor. Okay, cool. And it's one of these things where, had I not gone down that path of complete self, like, deprivation, self-destruction, I wouldn't have been given that opportunity to see that. And what I saw was disgusting. I saw myself and there was no hiding. There was no rationalizing. Well, it's not that dangerous. Like, it's just to keep me awake, and it's just this, it's just that. Like, no one will know. What happens in the darkness always comes to the light. So I choose to stay in that light, and I never lose sight of that perspective of what I saw. So that humility that people see in me, the compassion that they see, is grounded in what you would say, or most would say, is rock bottom. But I don't believe that rock bottom exists solely without it being your death, because I would just dig a hole deeper next time. Rock bottom to me is my inability to lower my standards faster than the circumstances. So things are happening so fast, and I'm like, oh, this is the worst. And then I get complacent. Then I'm good. And then let me just dig a hole deeper this time. I'm just done digging holes. But through this walk, I've realized that, I'm done chasing the mountain peaks and diving into the valleys and so on. I'm done with this. It's more of this, this emotional regulation. And that's why I really do believe I had to be sober-minded. I had to get sober, truly, for me. So temperance is a lot of people think temperance it's a virtue, but it's like it's a teetotalism or whatever that word is, where it's like all or nothing. I can either do this or not. It's bad. You're good if you don't do it. You're bad if you do. Like Jesus drank wine. Like he turned water into wine. So it's like alcohol by itself inherently is not evil. How I used it, my relationship with it, is when it became evil. That's when the footholds and this became a stronghold for the devil and for the world, the enemy, the culture, society, worshiping money, worshiping status, worshiping the wrong things, anything other than God. And then myself, my pride, my ego, that's the battle to fight. There's three things. They're right there, boom, every day. So the road, this path, this light that I'm on with the bearing that I've been shown, this azimuth, you saw me reference the verse from Psalms 119, 105, your word is a lamp for my feet and a light for my path, means so much to me because I'm in the light. So I'm found. I'm not lost. I'm not hiding. And I have to stay in that light. And I do that with the word of God. It's a light for my feet, to be where my feet are, to be present. And then it's a light on my path so I stay true. So I stay on this bearing. But on that path, on either side are these ditches or culvert, and when we start to veer slightly, a slight azimuth shift, or if you understand orienteering, like there's magnetic north, there's true north, and there's grid north. There's so many norths. But if I don't add the declination or subtract based on where I am on the earth, because the earth is round and I'm looking at a flat map, I have to add or subtract that declination to convert from grid to magnetic or vice versa. So if I don't do that, there's a couple degrees maybe, or a few, depending on where you are. Like that over thousands of meters puts you on a whole nother map sheet, lost. My point with saying that is that, I could get so distracted with just terrain associating. Like I'm just moving from here to here, then I drift off of my bearing. And right off of that narrow path that I'm on, following Christ, is that culvert. And when I trip into that thing, I know that I'm not alone because that walk is I'm with Christ, I'm with the Holy Spirit, is with me. All I got to do is ask, save me. And the hand will come, and then the lesson comes. And if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And that's how I live my life for a majority of it. So staying on that path, that culvert is that rock bottom, right? It's not. I'm emotionally regulated. So now, in order to truly surrender your life, I believe you have to be emotionally regulated, because you can't go, I surrender everything on one day, and then today I'm so depressed. I can't surrender anything. Like, it's daily. And that's not a dig. That's not anything. We have to work on our mental health. We have to seek counsel. I still do talk therapy. I have found a therapist that also connects it to scripture for me, and that works for me. But I still do it, not because I'm in crisis, but I could be. It's the same way with, like, I don't travel alone. If something has to take me away, like if you ask me to come over to England and it's an awesome opportunity, and I'm like, man, thank you so much, but I can't. If my wife can't go or someone on my team can't go, I don't go. I don't stay in hotels by myself. So when we travel together as a team, we stay together in Airbnbs, and people are like, could say what they want, but the reality of this is the childish ways of thinking and acting have to cease when you become a man, as it tells us in 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I thought like a child, I walked like a child. All these things, like, I look to God with this childish love and admiration and fear, 100%. But I am a man, and I have to stop those things. The ways of thinking and acting in childish ways had to cease. So it just took me 37 years to become a man, and I'm a 4-year-old, 4.5-year-old in sobriety, 4.5 years, and as a follower of Christ for 3.5. But that doesn't erase 37 years of life and experience. In fact, God's used all those things to mold me to become this leader, but I got to do the work. So the renewal of your mind comes from surrender. You start to look at the world differently. And the transformation comes with the people God puts in your life to grow, the work, to getting into God's word. And that's where the transformation comes. So
I don't want to make this too emotional, but I did want to ask about your wife and the strength of her through, especially from, like you said, the Radisson was like a tipping point for you, but then it was the fallout from that over those 2 years, and her staying as a support through a lot of that. Like, yeah, I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, you've met her a couple, through the past 2 days. Like, she has grown a lot as a woman, as a leader. But that woman that I met when I was 19, I look at her now the same way I looked at her back then, and just so much admiration and respect for the strength. I mean, when I met her, working full time, raising a kid on her own, and going to school to finish her bachelor's, and I was like, sign me up. Like, I need more of that in my life, and I lost sight of that. Like, she got her master's. She always worked, raising all our children, and the most giving person that you would ever meet. And I took advantage of that. But the blessing in all of that is, when I ran away from her, she ran towards God and her faith. Because she was forced into a certain religion when she was young, and she has her own, opinions about some of this stuff, but it's like, we didn't openly talk about it, So she started doing Bible studies with the kids when I wasn't there. And I was like, what? I thought it was Taco Tuesday. Like, what are y'all doing? And she'll laugh at that. But those things would happen when I wasn't there. And that's, to me, I was like, like, why not when I'm there? It's like, I made it about me, but it's happening without me because people didn't feel safe enough to want to do it, or they thought I would just be like, no, I'm good, based on everything I had given before. So she went towards her faith, and then she became extremely vocal about it. And I was so insecure and immature about it. I used to be like, she'd write a verse on something, like on a note, and I'd just rip it up. And I'm like, I don't need your God. And you're going to learn today. And I've made amends and asked for forgiveness for all those things from God, but also from her. And the thing about all of that is, like, I was like, this isn't a gimmick. Over time, I was like, there's no way. There's no way that she could still love me. She could still see something that I can't even see without her faith in God. And that drew me closer each time I was able to pick my head up and see this for what it was. And ultimately that led me to surrender. So, I mean, she led me down that path, but yeah, I mean, it's I gave her every reason under the sun to run and run far. But I think the biggest thing was something God was telling her to hold on, that he has more for me, and he's going to do that through her. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here. because I'd given up on everything. And we were blessed with Kennedy because of her, because of us, because of God. And it's just, there's all of it interconnects. And it's like, you know, so I owe her everything I'm doing and the work that I need to do more of. And I'm never going to take her for granted again. And and the thing about this is, like, I used to be so apprehensive to make promises because I would break them. And now if I make a promise, I'm going to do it. And I'm rebuilding trust in all of those things, but it's through her strength, man. And what I realize is that God gave me her as a gift to lead, but to be led by her example to become the man that I am now and becoming. And she's the only one that's ever protected my own heart. She's the protector of my heart. And, you know, I've taken this physical and metaphorical and spiritual, like physical and metaphorical armor off my heart, right? So now I can access it, but others can too. So to be vulnerable as a man can be such a blessing for you and for others, but it also opens yourself up to being hurt. And that's where I tell other men we do a weekly fellowship call, and like, anything that you say and share with me, I'll never use to hurt you. And I'm trying to establish that as a precedence to become more vulnerable. But we have to turn that vulnerability into an asset. And that's where to be vulnerable and capable as a warrior. And it's hard to balance both of those. But the fact is like if God's blessed you with your partner, you haven't found her yet, she's out there, and you have to really be intentional about where you're looking for her.
If we can try and condense the story of the ibogaine, because there was two experiences, but I feel like the second one was the one you said you had the most shift in. First of all, like, what is ibogaine? Why was it even suggested to you? And then what was the experience?
Yeah, so you know, some of the audience may have seen the Sean Ryan Show interview I did, episode 41. And it was a blessing to be able to do that with Sean. Sean's a great human being. But I had a lot more work to still do. And it's very clear on the interview that I'm still hurting, and that doesn't hurt my feelings. That's just the reality. But I was trying to heal a little more, to heal more out loud, to help one person. And because of him letting me on that platform and how how great of an interview it was, and he is, and that space that he held, like, it's helped a lot of people. And most importantly, it's helped me heal more. And, you know, after I filmed with him, I went and did, because of wonderful nonprofits like Special Operations Care Fund, SOCF, VETS, so Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. They just did that documentary, In Waves and More.
Oh, that was
about,
okay, wow.
So that's Marcus and Amber Capone's nonprofit they started, which is a wonderful documentary if you haven't seen it, and that'll connect to what we're about to talk about. But I was a part of the first cohort to go through. There's only 5 of us to go through this trifecta treatment. So it was 3 different modalities of treatment. So they looked at all the hormonal imbalances and tried to start to rectify those. The brain magnetic therapy, so the different waveforms, and trying to balance that out through the MERT, magnetic resonance therapy. And then ibogaine and 5-MeO-DMT. That's the 3 modalities that they were trying to isolate and see. And, you know, so I was out in San Diego for almost 2 months. And after I filmed with Sean, and the MERT stuff, like, it started, for me, some people have had a lot of really great results from it. But for me, it started causing a lot of chronic migraines again, which were under control. And then started developing like social anxiety, and which I had been sober for 10 months at that point. And it was really awkward and feeling to me. And then, so but at the end of all of that, I go down to Mexico with Trevor Miller and his team with Ambio Life Sciences. And there's essentially a 5-day treatment that you go through, but you stay in like a resort. It's a beautiful home overlooking the coast in Rosarito Beach, just across the border. And you can see some of that in the documentary, in Ways and More, but you do like a traditional Mexican like sweat lodge, which is wild, but it really detoxes you just from a pure sweat perspective. And then they do a bunch of different some coaching and stuff. You do breath work, you do some different yoga stuff, you do so it's like mind, body, and spirit. And what I really appreciated about that experience with Trevor and his team is, like, yes, they don't openly, talk about Christ, but they pray over every meal together. And one of the biggest things that comes out of that in these small groups that go down there, especially with the special operations community, is like, some guys will be like, man, I don't know what's out there. I don't know. And then by the end of that week, they're like, man, I don't know, something's out there for sure. And I'm curious. So there's a benefit to it just in that. But I was so curious, and at that point I was learning who Jesus was, and I was reading about him and learning more about him as a man. And I was like, this is a really good moral guide. But he's more than just that. If he was just a good moral guide, then he would be a lunatic because of what he said and how he said it and the things he did. So, but coming down there through that first experience with ibogaine, ibogaine itself was, there's some documentaries that were out that, it's called, Dosed. That first one I watched before I did the treatment, and it was being used in Gabon in Africa, the region that the root is, the iboga root, where it comes from. It'd been used for ceremonial disputes, or, hey, so-and-so had a miscarriage, let's do a ceremony, and they would use it as a community. So they've been using it for a long time, but that's not why I think we're using it. I think we're using it because what Trevor and his team were doing with it in Canada, they were legally allowed to use this, but they were safely administering ibogaine with people that were actively in a withdrawal from opioid use disorder, heroin addicts. And it was, the results were very profound from, the recovery from that type of disorder, because of how it interacts with those receptors. And I call it the great interrupter. That's the best way to describe what I think ibogaine is and has done for me. It's the great interrupter. It sucks. But if you release whatever it is you're holding on to, the control, the ego death, it will interrupt what you have going on up to your point in that life, and allow you to make changes in your life permanent. You got to do something with it, though. You can't I just took ibogaine, I'm good now. No, man, because you'll go back to doing the same things if you don't change the people, places, and things. So is that kind of helpful with like what ibogaine is? Yeah. And the big thing with ibogaine is, I don't know of a single person that would ever use it recreationally. And because it's still classified as it's a class 1 substance, so that means of no medical use and a high addiction, class. That's what puts it into those categories. It's illegal. So that's all changing because of organizations like Vets and all these other great organizations that are pushing, states to get behind this. So Texas passed the ibogaine Initiative Act, and so many other states are coming on board for clinical trials. And they're using a lot of the case studies from us that have gone and received this treatment. And there's a Stanford study that they just isolated this to ibogaine, where they sent and did all this tests with guys, and then sent them down just for the ibogaine, and flew them back and did the same tests, and they're seeing a massive, like, no denying, like, impact on the brain's ability to heal itself. So, which is wild, because once the brain's damaged, the scar tissue areas from traumatic brain injury and, blast exposure, like, they can measure them, they can see them. You can wear it like a badge of honor. I got 48 spots. One's like a dime size, like, and they tell you, like, you have to, and I did NICO, which is National Intrepid Center of Excellence. It's like one of the leading TBI treatment clinics in the military. And they tell you once that's damaged, you have to grow a bypass, a new neural pathway around that area through cognitive rehabilitation. So I've done a ton of that, and it's helpful, but ibogaine's been the most helpful thing that I've ever, treatment wise, because I was also ready to, receive it. And, the first time I did it, all the brain meds that I was still on, I think, blunted the efficacy of it. I didn't come off of them for long enough, but it did allow me to come off of them after. So it kind of curbed some of the withdrawal of those symptoms. And then 2-3 months later, I just completely went inward and was getting all these brain zaps, and just, it was awful. But then I reached back out to Trevor and said, hey, is there anything else I can try to do, like over the counter or any other, that I don't want to get back on these SSRIs and antidepressants and stuff, like, but it's crushing me. Something's crushing me now. And we tried a couple different things, and ultimately I went back the second time. And that's where the biggest difference was after I got back the first time, I surrendered my life to Christ. And then the second time I went, I took Christ into this experience with me, but I still had my ego. So it sorted that out, but I had to remember to breathe. And I focused on my breath, and one of the most shameful moments in my life, I had to relive, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. And I'm panicking, and the devil's there with me, and not the horn devil, but the devil, Satan, Lucifer. And I could see him coaching and tricking me and guiding me like we were best friends. And I was like trying to stop it, trying to get my own attention and change what was happening. I was trying to do it, and I couldn't. And I was physically panicking. And then I remembered to control my breath. And I took a few deep breaths in, and then I prayed. And I said, Jesus, save me. And he didn't say anything, but he saved me. And he held me and hugged me. Everything changed. That whole scene changed. And Jesus was with me. And then I see Jesus and a small boy in the distance in this next scene. And I'm like, please don't leave me. And not until I close the distance. I'm yelling and pleading, but I had to physically close that distance, that gap, whatever was holding me back. And when I got there, they turned around, and it was me as a small boy. And I picked myself up. And I know that I'm a good father because I picked myself up, and I felt like I was holding my daughter. And I said, no one's ever going to hurt you again. And Jesus looked at me and said, no one's ever going to hurt you. Follow me. And that's what I'm doing. So when people talk about ibogaine, psychedelic treatment, I'm only going to ever advocate from my experience. And I took Christ into that with me. And it has allowed me to make the things in my life permanent. And the most important thing in my life is my faith.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an incredible experience. Like it's not just isolated. Like I've seen other people report similar things, that some people have taken faith into it and had similar experiences with faith. But I don't know, like whenever I've met people who have experienced it and I've seen something of them from before, it feels like when you say you were like holding on to pain, you had a lot of pain inside of you, it seems like that's been dropped. Like it seems like that's gone, that hurt, that pain. It's so interesting. Like it is, I hope they break the science down even more on it.
Because his yoke is light. We have to give it to him. If we bear the weight of the world, man, it's too much. It's too much. It doesn't mean we're not going to be challenged. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to walk out of this room and get into an argument with my wife. I'm going to try not to. But it gets easier. The yoke is lighter. But you have to surrender the darkest, the deepest things that you're holding on to. And it takes time. Be patient. Give me time to work through the deepest, darkest crevices of trauma in your mind. And when those things come up, when I think something, you know, I'm trying to be very precise with it instead of holding on to it and be like, well, I didn't feel a way about it. I just thought it. This thought, feeling, and action kind of loop. Like when that's disrupted, that's what panic is. But thoughts, why it says take every thought captive is because those race thousands of miles an hour. Actions, you could lock me up, put me in a room, and it's going to really limit what I can do. Feelings, eventually over time, if you think about like that book, A Man's Search for Meaning, it's up here somewhere. Like people that didn't have an identity outside of themselves became conformed to the cage. And it's one of those things where your feelings will change in isolation. And your thoughts, though, they take so long to, they're the hardest ones to harness, but that's where precision. So precision is like, man, that's not good. And look, I didn't do anything with it. No. Lord, please forgive me for that thought. Please take that thought from me. And please allow me to fill it with something good, with your will, and allow me to do your will instead of mine. And that's just like, I don't get this right all the time, but that's what grace is. There's grace for it if we accept it. And, you know, people are like, well, you guys can just do whatever you want and then ask for forgiveness. No, because if we're doing that, we haven't actually surrendered our lives to Christ. You can believe and not follow. You can profess and not possess. And what that looks like is leaves. Leaves are really loud, they grow really quickly, and then they fall off. Whereas the fruit is what we need to be held accountable to, is the fruit. And it's one of those things where it's like, to go and sin no more. As Jesus was talking with the adulterous lady, and the Pharisees were about to stone her, and he looks at all of them and he says, he without sin cast the first stone. And they're all like, and they drop them and they storm off. And Jesus looks at her and he says, all your sins have been forgiven, but go and sin no more. And if you just think about that based on what I just said and how I said it, it's like, well, I can't make any more mistakes because I'll lose my salvation. You can't lose your salvation if you've truly surrendered your life to Christ, because new mistakes is to go and sin no more, to be made new. I will make mistakes. And all God wants is that they are new. I cannot do the same things as I used to. I have been made new. All of my sins have been washed in the blood of Christ. And that's where the emotional regulation piece is so important, because I can say the words and not mean it in my heart. And that's okay, as long as I come to that realization of when I make these new mistakes. Like it's from a heart posture of like, I am so sorry. As a child and as father, I'm sorry for disappointing you. Please help me with this. And ask for things, ask for guidance, ask for clarity, ask for wisdom. But sometimes if there's silence, it's because he wants you to continue to pursue him first. And that's where your faith can be tested to see the genuineness of it. And that's God doesn't hurt us, but he will test us to take us to the next level.
Have you struggled with your faith in terms of the journey from finding it till today? Like, has it been an easy path, or have you had to put some work into it?
So that's where, short answer is, you absolutely have to put work into it. It's the work that's worth doing. And that's the fruitful life, right? The fruit of the Spirit, right? To live like Christ did, to lead like Christ did, with grace, but with truth. To be in service to others, like all those things, that's the work stuff. But in order to do it, like you have to be spiritually conditioned in order to grow. And you can't do that in a vacuum, because that book of books is really hard to understand by yourself. And you have to be doing it this way, vertically and horizontally. Confess your sins to one another and be healed, as it says in James 5:6, I believe. That tells us, they're telling us that, like, we get wrapped around the word sin and we're like, oh, well, it wasn't a sin. But if you thought it, you might as well have done it. If you looked at it a certain way, you might as well have done it. That's the precision piece that Jesus gives us his examples of. And it doesn't negate the 10 commandments and all those things. It's a new covenant with Christ in the resurrection. So there's a measure of like, if I did this in just a silo, even just vertically, I can have faith. I can have my faith, but lose hope. And hope comes from the messengers, from the people, from the counsel, from the wisdom that you get to experience for spreading the gospel, for sharing the word with others through your example, your actions, and then words. The words only come with work. When you see people preaching and their actions don't match that, no one follows them. Actions and then words. So I was really focused on my actions, all whilst, like, I even use the word, whilst. Yeah, all whilst getting into the Word of God, and then sharing that with others that I respect, that are further in this walk in faith, to help me comprehend it. And you have to, because it's one of those things where hope without faith is a fantasy, but once you have faith, you can lose hope with stagnant, with siloed. But man, hope, faith, and love are the three that remain. But love, man, God is love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not boast. It does not envy. It doesn't count for the wrongdoing of others to you. And like all these things, if you read that, love is the greatest blessing that we've been all given. Learning how to love, though, is something that's taken a lot of work, and continuing how I show love, how I receive love. But we have an example of Christ as he walked with us, and all the things he said is and did was because it was for us as an example. And understanding those things and how they connect in your life it takes a group, it takes a community in order to do it.
Something you spoke about yesterday again, which I think we've mentioned today, was about breathing. And a lot of people, like I said, sometimes we have quite a strong male audience, and we talk about breathing. It's foo-foo, it's woo-woo, it's all that kind of stuff. We were talking about breathing in a like similar kind of fashion, but as we were doing the CQB, so is this something you would have done on operation, like to the point where you like breathe in and using those techniques?
I mean, yeah, it's something that, I mean, I first got exposed to breath work through like that unit I was in. Like they bring in these, the best coaches in the world for all the different things from, how do we perform better? So they would bring in, and some things would fall flat. Some things would be like, oh, let's take that and use it. But the breathwork piece of diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing, and just the ability to take in more oxygen, and that's how we perform. Is not being hypoxic. That sucks. It's breathing. It's oxygenating our blood, and that's how we continue to endure. So, but then like through that process, like I started to notice that everyone can agree that power, when the elbows bend, the power ends, right? If you're doing any sort of like racked lift or power lift, front squat, when your elbows bend, the power ends. Why? Because your back, the small muscles in your lower back cannot handle that type of load. So that's where you're resting on your skeletal structure. But if your core is loose, that's where that elbows bend and everything collapses. So that directly connects to shooting and moving, shooting on the move, not running to it. It connects to running into a position and out of a position, but I'm talking about like CQB, shooting and moving straight on, laterally, across your body, all the different things. And how do I keep my core intact? Because with a front squat, a heavy front squat or a back squat, I can just go and get away with it, and then maybe pass out when I rack the weight if it's really heavy. You can't do that in CQB. So you can't hold your breath. Were you holding your breath?
Probably was. I probably was.
So I started to think about like how the diaphragm and what it's doing with belly breathing. So if you take a deep breath, like trying to push your belly out first, and then your lungs, it increases the amount of volume you can take in versus just like, it's hard for me not to belly breathe. It's a part of my life now, like inherently with what I do. But there's a point where you're starting that process where the diaphragm's pushing down to create more space, and it's locking. You can hold that and still breathe and talk. I'm doing it right now. It locks down into the pelvic kind of cradle. And then if your skeletal structure is in bone on bone on bone, like it's resting on skeletal structure, and then you lock in that diaphragm into the pelvic cradle, now I've anchored my core, and you have to complete that process from underneath too. So it's like here, and then you can still move and shoot and breathe, not like full breath, like not like, because you're gonna break that, but you can absolutely lock in your core through that. So it's something I learned through learning how to belly breathe because of the box breathing aspect of like a 4-count breath, in, hold, 4, out, 4, hold, 4, right? Something like that. The box breathing. It's a really useful tool for resetting a bit of the nervous system, and which works really great. And that's why we teach it, and we have a coach that we dial in, and she's been working with us for years, Amber. and she'll run us through a 30-minute block before they get into the final scenarios on day 3. So, and I do it with them because I need it. And they don't even maybe know they need it. But everybody walks away. And I've had people say this to me, like, Kyle, there's no way on this planet I thought I'd be doing this type of breathing and that exercise, dragon's breath, and but you were doing it. So then I did it. It's like, he was like, you gave us permission to do it. And that's good. That's not an ego thing. That's like, Roger that. Because I know it's good for me. And it can be helpful for you if you practice it. And it's just like anything. You gotta practice it for it to be there when you need it under pressure. And there's a timing for it too. Like, I'm not gonna be doing that outside the door. Like, hold on 1 second. Like, maybe when I'm a minute out, kind of thing, I can do a bit of that with my eyes open. But the way that connects to stabilizing your core and shooting on the move is huge. Once people really understand that and understand how to practice it, doesn't make you perfect by no means, because you're human. The fundamentals of marksmanship are there to isolate and remove as much of the human error into mechanical tools. But you're the problem. You're the problem. Like, so let's figure out how to make it that less of a problem. And that's what the shooting and moving and the fundamentals of marksmanship are for.
This is more of a prompt than anything. To talk, we had a nice conversation outside, but we'll talk about Jacob, who we're looking at doing a project with in the future. But you mentioned him.
He's a good bloke.
He's a good lad. He's a good bloke. A very, very nice guy. Yeah.
I mean, I'm really proud of him. His interview he did with Sean, I'm so excited that you're gonna do something with him. He's actually, I'd say actually, like, I don't believe I'm the greatest storyteller. I'm becoming a better one, but there's my stories. I'm not embellishing. And I think that that's something that he has the ability to do is to tell stories that are grounded in facts and truth and animated when he's doing it. And I'm excited for him to be able to do something with you. But I mean, him and I met for the first time on a deployment, and he actually talked about me a little bit on that interview he did with Sean, and just the reverence that he has for Delta Force, just from his experience working with us. We'll have these small unit exchanges where we'll have 1 or 2 other guys or more kind of spread out through the different units in the unit. But this trip specifically, like, I think he had a bad experience or kind of isolated experience, and I don't think it was any fault of the troop that was there before us. But when we got there, we were like, oh man, that's another assaulter. Let's go. And just kind of opened our doors and said, you're part of the team. Like, we eat, together, work out together. And when we could go on missions together, we would absolutely bring him out. And he'd stay with us in our CHU and my team. And so I got to, experience, or meet him at a time too, where I think he was struggling, as was I, with a lot of things and alcohol and you could see that come out when we start drinking in me and in him. And I'm here for him. Even from afar, I'm excited when he does get the opportunity to move to the States. But I'm really glad that GBRS they found each other and they've taken him in and supporting him through all the different things that he's faced. I don't understand. I do and I don't. Culturally, like, the support your troops, right? Like, it's been one of the things, like, I couldn't imagine serving in the military in the Vietnam era, where they had hardly any support. They came home and they were just like spit on, and the systems were so broken. And there's still, a lot of work that has to be done, but man, we get a lot of support in this country as service members, men and women, rightfully so. But the UK, for some reason, and more specifically that unit, which is phenomenal. I have nothing but respect for that unit. But that Who Dares Wins needs to say something about, and if you talk about this, like, we're going to make your life harder. And we experience that too. It's like nobody talks about Fight Club. And I try not to just talk about it to talk about it. If I talk about it, I want to share some sort of message with it that can help others. Like, I'm not doing it for my own personal gain or notoriety. And I believe that that's the same with Jay as well. So, but y'all, same with Christian Craig. They don't get the support, and it's I'm glad he's going to be able to share some time with you on your platform, and I'm excited to see that too.
You spoke about the deployment as well. What happened on the deployment? It led to, again, like a bit of a moment for you where you came out of that thinking, is that something you're able to talk about? Or?
Yeah. It was that trip, yeah, and where Jay was there, and I don't know if he was on this mission like when we infilled, but I know he, like we were out there for 36, 48 hours, which is not normal. Like we normally fly on in. The flight is usually longer than how long it takes to execute the mission. And then we're out. So this was different because we were infilling at night and which isn't different, but this area that we were going to was kind of a newer area, and we were targeting, trying to close ISIS down completely. And there's still these little pockets. And a lot of them were going through the desert back into Iraq and going to this kind of guerrilla warfare mindset. But so we get out there and on infill, and this is also a God thing, where I was the senior 2IC in the troop, which is like the ATL for my team. And we were broken down over four helicopters for the specific missions that we would do most of the time. And I would lead that fourth bird as a part of that mission. So there's 3 TLs on the first 3. And then, but for this mission, it was more of a, raid type mission. And I was actually on the 3rd bird with all of my team, versus us being spread out. So we infill, and there was plenty of space between all of us, but the brownout was really bad, like from the rotors, like kicking up the dirt. And we get out, and I'm running. I'm always gonna, as a 2IC, like I'm leading the way for my team to wherever we're going, and I'm sprinting to the target, and I just hear a huge explosion, and I look back, and there's the brownout from the 4th helicopter, and I see sparks flying and things flying everywhere, and through the brownout, and I was like, did they just get shot down? Like, what just happened? And while this is happening, like, we are in an active gunfight. The first 2 lead helicopters were already in it on the target. So I was like, they just shot down our helicopter. And I go running back to them. My whole team goes. The first 2 go contain the target, and my team goes and secures the crash site. And as I'm going through, the brownout still is thick. It's the first time I've ever felt this operational environment wise, where I'm going through this thing and I'm like, I got emotional. And I was like, I'm going to see all my friends dead. It's the first time I've ever felt that. Not that I didn't care about my friends, my teammates. I did. It's just, it never like hit me in a moment like that. And, I break through, and I see my teammates just kind of everywhere. Some of them are pretty injured, and some of them are just kind of walking wounded, just super knocked down and dazed. And then the pilot, the left seat pilot, was just dead in the cockpit, and the whole left side of the helo was just caved in, and his half of his face was gone from the dash. So now I'm like, there's fuel spewing everywhere, and I'm like, forget that stuff. Like, that other stuff, like, let's go. We got to get away from this. So it's like herding cats, and then rendering aid to the people that needed aid. And so we casevaced, that whole helo out to include the pilot. And there was the way that we exfilled those guys and sent them off. Like I wasn't happy with. We could have did better, and we put the pilot on the same exfil bird with the crew, and that's someone they live with and work with all the time. Not that we don't care about those guys, we do, but we don't work with them, those same guys, all the time. Like we could have very easily taken one of the injured operators and put him on that helo, and then put the deceased pilot on the other bird. So I was upset about that, and covered him up at least with something, and we go back to the link up with the other two teams and finish the mission. It took a while. They were extremely hardened fighters and fortified buildings, and it was crazy. But we stayed there until we secured every little bit of that crash site. So it was a very, very long, because we were not going to let any aspect of this. We found out that it did not get shot down. It was the brownout, and crashed it. Just came in too hot. And the way that the fuel boom is, it just hits, and then either way, we secured every aspect of it, and we tried a bunch of different ways to dismantle it, and then cargo load it out, helo wise. And then that's when I think Jay came down with a British bird. And he probably was a part of how we were able to get that another like resupply or even exfil at that. It was like 48 hours or something, but it was a long couple days. And yeah, but I got back and I was like, we got to do better about the psychological aspect of this. Like we have to be better. And I was very upset and projecting like a lot. And I called back to my therapist that also worked for the unit and asked him a question. I said, Doc, am I doing more harm than good by staying in this environment? And I don't fault him for this answer, but he's like, Kyle, it depends on what your goals are. You've conveyed to me that you want to be a team leader, you want to be the best operator you can be. Then the answer is, he didn't give me an answer. That was his answer. What are your goals? And he puts that back. A good therapist is never going to tell you what to do anyways, but I got off that. I actually called the chaplain because I'd already started talking with the chaplain through marriage counseling. And I told him, I was like, I think I need to medically retire. And he's like, well, Kyle, I support that decision. If you want to prioritize your marriage and your health and your family, like that's probably the best thing for you to do. And I was about 17 years in the Army, and 20 years is where you can get your full pension. So I talked to Erica and I tell her, I'm like, I think I should medically retire. And she was like, thank God. And I don't think I've seen her that excited in a long time up to that point. And then I committed to it. I went to my leadership and I said, hey, I can't keep doing this. And I'd like to, after this trip, start the process to med board. And they were super supportive of it. And before we got back from that trip though, some other things happened from a manning perspective and internal to the unit, and the position that this other person was going to take, he couldn't. So my team leader was the next up for it. So they needed him to take that position. And then they offered it to me. They said, Kyle, if we do this, would you be willing to take your team as the TL? And it was a little early from typical experience, So, but man, when they said that to me, I was like, that's all I've ever wanted to do, is to be a team leader in this unit. Even before I knew what this unit was. Like, it's to make it there, to work my way through, to be the best that I could be, and then to be given that opportunity. And it was like, and I called Erica and said, hey, this is what's happened. I really want to do this. And she was apprehensive, of course, but she has sacrificed so much because of my passion, my desires, and she sacrificed. And, you know, but I should have medically retired at 17 years. But like I said before, I wouldn't be here if maybe that were the case too. So everything works out the way it works out for a reason.
Well, talking of another good guy, Chris Fetter, you know, we're off to interview him. So
every time you say his last name, I'm like, are we talking about the cheese? Are we talking about some good feta? Feta? No, Chris Fetter? Yeah. No, I love him. He's SEAL Cream 6. He, what's ironic about, not ironic, but he was going through jump school in like in the tandem master course, which is a really hard course. And he did it pretty early in his career. And I was going through our basic free fall course, and I didn't know him, but someone that was in the same squadron as me was in the tandem course. He was actually his jump buddy. And that dude took me under his wing. When we got towards the end of the courses, they kind of end at the same time, and they do some fun jumps. And if you want to jump, go jump. And I was like, all right, let's go. And I got to meet Chris then. And my first encounter with Chris Fettis was jumping out of a plane at 14,000 feet and doing a horny gorilla.
all right, what's the horny gorilla?
Well, it's super dangerous, but you essentially jump out and then lock your legs together. So like 3 of us, and then you start turning, and then you create this like on your backs. It's just this wheel of death thing until somebody lets go, or until it's full altitude. Just save your own life. But he is such a good dude. I don't throw that around loosely because I have in the past, and I just I'm really proud of him. To get to know him. Like, I got to meet him and train with him. He was working, he was still doing training stuff a lot before he really committed to the ice cream, like fully, like he has. And, he was doing some stuff with a nonprofit that was going and advising in Ukraine. And they asked me if I could do a small unit tactics like training thing. And it just so happened Chris was, and we didn't know that we had met 10 years ago before that, or however long it was. And we put 2 and 2 together after that training event. And we've just that's when we became friends, was that experience. And I saw that he was, regardless of where he came from, he was a wonderful student to train with. And then just over time, we've supported each other, on the training side. And, even as more recently as last year, and in September, we were doing the protector mindset, and I asked him if he could come out and help me out. And so he'll occasionally guest instruct with us at Blue Bearing, and he's a vetted, trusted agent, in that sense. But I'm really proud of him, man, because for one, when you go up there, the Be Free Craft Cafe is phenomenal. Everything they make there is just, it's good. And the way that he leads that company, and he's been a mentor on the business side for me quite a bit. And he's just one of those people, man, in what he's doing with scaling the new business and getting into stores and commercial packaged goods stuff. I'm just so proud of him, man. And but he's one of those people though, if he texted me, I'm gonna call him, and talk to him. So I got nothing but time for Chris Fettis.
Yeah, just lastly, what do you think of his passion for the ice cream?
It's real. It's not a facade. Like, I'm proud of him because he was trying for so long to do training, because he's so passionate about training, and then the ice cream stuff is going to suffer to try to manage both. And then he just learned a lot of lessons. He shared those with me, and that's helped me as a leader in my company. And he's fully committed to it, man. And it's like, to see him build that cafe and the team he's assembled, working through all the, just how do you hire the right people? How do you develop those people? And when you experience it, it's a cool cafe. And then just the amount of the way he brands and stuff, he's super creative, and he's going to do well. He's going to continue to do well. And I'm not a big ice cream person, but I will absolutely eat whatever they make. Like, it is so good. It's like a meal in itself. And they do coffee now too, and the pastries are freaking phenomenal. Like, I'm glad I live 4 or 5 hours away. So I already got about 10 pounds I need to cut.
I've got With You Heart and Soul as as a final note. We could end on that, and then we could do the recording.
Yeah.
But we spoke about With You, but I'd love to talk about the proverb itself and what it means. Because yesterday, like I don't know, like when you came up behind me one time and you said that, it really like landed on me quite deeply. But I also thought it was something worth talking about and sharing with the audience as a sort of final note.
The With You Heart and Soul, that experience that you had with coming up behind you and saying with you, that's where it connected with me first, was like, I'm with you. When I hear that and I know that person is in fact with me, like, it's just I don't have to look at them. It's just like, I can just go, and I know they're covered down on things that I can't in that moment. But in the reference of battle, like Jonathan, which was the son of Saul, King Saul, which was made the king of the Israelites, and then he made it about himself. And then God took that from him and gave it to David. That's where David and Goliath comes from. So Jonathan is the son of Saul, which was the oldest son, and he was the next heir to the throne. But as the prophet Samuel, took that from David, and said, you no longer have that. God is gone from you because of his actions, and gave it to David. And then David and Goliath, and it wasn't like right away. It didn't become known. And there's a wonderful show on, I don't know if it's Netflix or Prime, but it's called House of David. It's a really good show about this exact thing I'm talking about. But on 1 Samuel 14, it tells us that Jonathan was a warrior, and David became one in defeating Goliath. But he had God, and he empowered and encouraged all the people. Like, why would you be standing here cowering from these mere men? Like, we have God with us. And that's where that courage on display of going to fight Goliath is such an impactful story. But Jonathan and David became really close, even against Saul's wishes, because once Saul found out that had been passed to David and not through his lineage, he was trying to kill David, and Jonathan protected him. So in this battle, Jonathan had what's called an ammo bearer, or an armor bearer, and Jonathan said to the young man who carried his armor, "Come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few." And his armor bearer said to him, "Do all that is in your heart. Do as you wish. Behold, I am with you, heart and soul." And you do armor bearer. He's like, "I got your armor, man. Let's go. I'm with you, heart and soul." And to me, that's just like connecting that to a close quarters battle environment is is easier for me to do because I've literally felt that feeling. Like there's no doubt in my mind once you say that with you, that verbal squeeze, like you don't have to touch me. You just told me you're with me. I can continue what it is we're battling for. This battle for morality is how I define close quarters battle in the confines of a structure. So something is wrong, and you want to try to make it right, and someone's willing to fight for that, and you're willing to fight against it. That's the battle for morality of what is right and wrong. So that with you, heart and soul, is something that, when I say it, I mean it.